Whenever you're ready.
Judge. Example, before lunch, we were talking about the back check meeting on June 20th. You recall questions about that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And my question before lunch was violence also discussed during the meeting?
Yes, it was.
By Adam Fox?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to refer you to exhibit number 281. And Judge, did I move to admit those prior to the break? Sure.
Wrote them down, but I don't show that I
They
admitted
were
them.
not admitted. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
79 to 281.
Right, Judge.
And Your Honor, I wanted an opportunity to review what exactly it was. They provided them to me, and I have no objections.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
John?
No objection.
279 to 281 are admitted.
Okay. In clip 281, can you tell me what we're going to hear from that back check meeting?
Sure. So in clip 281, sequentially in time, this is all of our clips after exhibit 128.
Okay.
And this is a discussion about how many men are needed to storm the Capitol.
Okay, thank you. If you could play it.
So like what no shit numbers are we gonna need? You mentioned 1,400. I mean, that's a lot, man. 200 seems like a suicide in the Capitol right now. Fucking cover the exit points.
They're gonna come and form us. We need somebody behind them.
If we had 1,000 men, we could do it. We could send 300 men in the Capitol to seize it and take the hostages in charge, the ones who need to charge. And then we could have, let them fucking stack up on us. And then we could have the other 700 roll in. We could have snipers from buildings, from apartments and shit. We could do the same fucking thing we do. We could outplay their game and have them out fucking position and everything. But we don't have the detail. We need the actual men to step up willingly and fucking go do this.
So when Mr. Fox is talking about how many men needed to seize it and take the hostages, Mr. Bellar says, yeah, correct?
That's correct.
And then he talks about after those men go in, they could have more men and have snipers from buildings, correct?
Correct.
What about exhibit 280, if you can tell me what that is? Oh, I'm sorry, 279.
279, it's audio clip from the back check meeting, and it comes sequentially after exhibit 134. This is a discussion about taking tours of the Capitol and using that to get additional intelligence.
Okay, thank you. If you could play that. 279.
I tell you one thing, that taking the Capitol would be a big fucking job. It would require a lot of smart fucking people because that is a huge building. There's a lot of ins and fucking outs, not to mention multiple fucking floors. Over there every month.
Do you think MHG?
I think we need to start, like, when we go there, like, just kind of doing our little tourist things, you know, like, just kind of getting to know it. Falling going on a tour, there's one in there. Go walk through there and act like you're being here, you know? Right. I mean,
Like
that,
I
I mean,
wouldn't
fucking
come
layout.
out there and train, like all you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we get, like, what other people we do, people somebody don't go into their houses and shit, like.
What other things can we do? I mean, Pete said something about, going to their houses and shit, right?
Correct.
Is that a reference to his 3 plan?
Yes.
Exhibit 280, please tell us what that is.
So exhibit 280 sequentially is in order from the back check meeting. This comes right after exhibit 130 from the back check meeting, June 20th. And this is a description of going after businesses in the area from Ty Garvin.
Okay. Exhibit 280, please.
We need to start linking up these groups. If you're gonna go for the Capitol, you need people inside. You're gonna need people that like work at the local businesses, right? That are seeing and planning every single day. You need people on the ground before it even comes time.
Thank you. So established here a couple of times that Mr. Bellar stays for the meeting as long as Dan does, correct?
Yes.
And as long as Ty Garvin does, right?
Yes, this is the 620 back check meeting.
thank you. And then they walk out together somewhere, parking lot or something you said?
Yes,
Okay, and there's a conversation, is that right?
yes,
Okay, was any time during that conversation, do you ever hear Mr. Bellar on the audio saying the word crazy?
I did not hear that.
Okay, now you have been asked by Mr. Kirkpatrick in your previous testimony about whether you ever testified that Mr. Bellar said at that time that Adam Fox was crazy, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and do you remember testifying back on March 3rd, 2021 from the preliminary exam transcripts?
I remember it generally.
Okay, Mr. Kirkpatrick got a couple of pages, right?
Correct.
Okay, is it true he asked you a bunch of times about that specific topic?
Yes, numerous times throughout the exam that was
Okay.
asked.
And during that time, did you say that you couldn't remember a specific statement?
Yes,
In fact, were you asked this question and did you give this answer? The question was the meeting at the shop back with Adam Fox. It's true that my client said to your informant on numerous occasions that Adam Fox is crazy, correct? And did you give this answer? I'm trying to find that specific statement. I believe it's fair that he made comments like that. I don't think that's mischaracterizing it, but I can't recall the exact times that happened. Is that right?
that's correct.
Okay, and then about a year later, when you testified in February of 2022 in a hearing in this court, you said something similar, is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Kirkpatrick didn't show you those pages, did he?
No, he didn't.
Okay. And you were asked this question, did you give this answer? So we would rely on Dan again, that was this recorded, and your answer was, the entire meeting was recorded, yes, and we should have a recording of everything that occurred. So if there's a specific statement, I think, or anybody should be able to point to it, and will rely on the recordings for the accuracy of what was said. Is that right?
That's correct.
You were asked that same question about, did my client say crazy? He was crazy, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then you also answered, I'd have a hard time giving any particular quotes without seeing the transcript or what you're referring to in the recording. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, at that hearing or any other hearing, never gave you a specific recording, did he?
No, he didn't.
You did mention, though, after Mr. Kirkpatrick was asking you questions about, a generalized statement about a Leroy Jenkins. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Who called Adam a Leroy Jenkins?
Mr. Paul Bellar did.
Okay. And what is a Leroy Jenkins?
So a Leroy Jenkins, it's an inside reference that the Wolverine Watchmen have used throughout the entire investigation.
Okay.
The reference is to a YouTube clip. It's a YouTube clip that went viral. And it's a YouTube clip of an online game. And in the online game, there's a team that's stacking up outside a door, getting ready to fight the enemy. And in that YouTube clip, the team is planning their attack. And they're going over the roles and responsibilities of different players in the game. And one of the players, Leroy Jenkins, just takes off and charges through the door and starts the attack while the planning is going on. And the other members follow him through the door and they try to come up and talk about the plan and say, let's do the plan as they're going into the room, and everybody dies in a few seconds later.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. Is this a game that there is on
World of Warcraft.
you? So this isn't my client doing any of this, correct? This is a game that's on YouTube?
Just a reference. This is.
Oh, okay.
reference.
So I'm explaining the viral reference from the YouTube clip
Okay.
regarding what a Leroy Jenkins is.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Leroy Jenkins then is the person who charges in and basically kills the entire team before the plan's ready.
Okay, thank you. And that's what Mr. Bellar called Mr. Fox after this meeting, correct?
So that statement that I could find was on a conference call with leadership on June 26th,
Okay.
2020.
Before Mr. Fox came to training, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. You were read some text by your fellow agent, Jason Chambers, is that right?
Yes,
Okay. One specific text you were asked a bunch of times about was the "get with Adam" ? Text, correct?
correct.
You were given a series of, I believe it was four texts.
Yes,
Okay, but in sequential order, there's more than 4 texts. Is that right in that segment of time?
that's correct. There's a lot more than 4 texts.
Okay. And And you did not write those, is that right?
These are not my texts. I became aware of them after the case.
Okay. And what was going on in time of these texts with regards to this investigation, Mr. Butler?
Well, that's what we were trying to figure out. We knew that there was a disagreement between Joe Morrison and Jada Morrison and Paul Bellar. We knew that Paul Bellar had stated he was leaving the group. We knew that Adam Fox and Barry Croft had been peripherally introduced to the group. And we knew that Paul Bellar had talked about starting a ghost group. So we were trying to determine what team Paul Bellar was on.
Okay. And when you mean team, what do you mean by that?
I mean, if he's leaving the Wolverine Watchmen, where's he going? Is there anybody else providing direction? Is he in contact with Adam Fox?
Okay.
Is he in contact with Barry Croft? What's going on?
No one forced him to get in contact with Mr. Fox, is that right?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the ghost group meeting. Can you bring up exhibit 227, please? This is the timeline, correct?
Yes,
And then you were asked a lot of questions about the defensive mission statement, as Mr. Kirkpatrick called it, correct?
correct.
Okay, and where is that on this? Which event number is that?
That's event number 4, I believe. So the formation of the new ghost group QRF right around that time is when the mission statement is established.
That you said it was about 30 minutes in. Is it event number 10, the rejection of Pete's plan?
Well, I believe I was referring to
Objection,
number 11.
speculation.
What's speculative? I asked.
When he
you-
says, I believe, okay, I don't have a problem with him testifying. When I'm asking him questions, I believe, it's speculation. It's speculation now. If he knows, he knows. If he doesn't, he kept saying, I can't put myself in Mr. Bellar's mind. I'm just asking to testify what he knows, Your Honor, not what he believes.
Go ahead.
Number 11, the QRF will not perform kidnapping. That's the statement about not bagging politicians.
Okay,
And so the mission statement occurs early on about being defensive, and then half hour or so into the conversation at 8:22, there's a reference to, after they discussed Pete Musico's 3 a.m. plan, not performing the kidnapping.
okay. So help me out with this. There's a part of the clips, if you could go to those clips and tell me there's a section about how, when will we cross the line? What is the line in the sand? And that's going to be a group discussion. Can you find me that clip, please?
Give me a sec.
Sure. And in that clip, Dan is informing everyone else right after that about how in Wisconsin, it's going to be offensive people.
I know the one you're talking about. Sorry, can you say the one again that I'm looking for?
Sure. Where's Dan, the offensive part? Maybe that was in Mr. Kirkpatrick's.
Yeah, it was. And I think you had briefly said the one before it. I was looking for.
So tell me if I'm wrong about the sequence of events, okay?
Sure,
So there's this defensive mission statement, correct?
correct.
All right. And then another topic is discussed. It's Wisconsin and going to Wisconsin. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And and Dan informs the group, hey, Wisconsin's going to be offensive, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Heavy hitters are coming, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Bellar hears that, and he goes to Wisconsin anyways. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. In fact, later on in the meeting, he picks out a fallback location in case Wisconsin is infiltrated by feds, correct?
That's correct.
All right. When would you ever need an exfiltration point or a fallback location?
You're going to have contact and get in a firefight.
Okay, with law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay, so despite that, Mr. Bellar, who wants to be defensive apparently at the beginning of this meeting, he then goes to Wisconsin, right?
Correct.
And it was suggested to you, he doesn't have a lot of money at this point. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And that Dan pays for everything. Is that right?
That's correct.
Is that true?
No.
All right. And can you bring up 146? This meeting is July 7th, right? Can you zoom in on the top, please? 2 weeks earlier, on 6/26, Mr. Bellar had spent $400 on medical gear. Is that right?
Yes.
He details what that medical gear is later on in that same chat. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So he goes there. You can take this down. He goes to Wisconsin, and he goes there, and he about training them. Correct?
Correct.
And he talks about how he has been training Mr. Fox, right?
Correct.
Okay. Because he sees some things happening in Wisconsin that he doesn't think are very good medical techniques. Is that about right?
That's fair and accurate.
Okay. And then he says, I think we need to step up and teach them the way we've been teaching Adam. Is that right?
Yes.
Can we play exhibit 165, please? It's on day 1 of the training or day 2 of the training?
He makes the statement on day 1 and then he assists with training on day 2.
Okay.
Yeah, you're improvement. You're not medical. Why do you think I joined you guys up there? Right, medical was a fucking butcher show. That's why because I knew what. And I'm not gonna sit there.
That's the issue too, is like people, wrong people training with wrong.
And like, me and Jake are both sat and like, we wanted to say something, but we just. Well, sometimes we, well, what's not the same thing? Keep the shit out here. To put in check. I let people do this shit. And they're like, all right, I like what you're doing, man. Let me treat you like, okay. How about this? Because, the medical stuff, it's not my way. It's like, Ramey kids, they were already fucking out. He was already fucking out everything about IFAC. He kind of said they were working, like, someone else. I'm like, no, IFAC report you. That is for the medic or whoever's going to aid you to fucking rip off of you and use on you. Right. Like, that's the same thing as like burning through your own tourniquets on someone else that got hurt. You use their fucking tourniquets. You find out where the tourniquet's at and you place it on them. But I watch my own food unless I get how, hey, the technical stuff is in my wheelhouse. That's what I've done. And with the ill health coming up, I really like how, I don't know if that guy's name is. The guy's gonna run the shit kind of.
Big guy?
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, Steve. He was talking about how he wanted number 1 guy to go right, number 2 guy to go middle, and number 3 guy to go left. And that's way off. Like, you're supposed to be better than that shit. I like doing our story. That's how they do that. I feel like when we go do this, I feel like we need to like kind of step up as a team and maybe show them the proper way. And see, the Adam already knows this. We've been teaching it down. Right.
And then on day 2, after Barry Croft is done holding court, talking about terrorism, Mr. Bellar gives some advice to them, right?
Correct.
Gives, says, hey, you should take a medical history because if you're down in a firefight, your medic needs to know about your medical history, right?
Correct.
Okay, he tells them, hey, you should organize.
I'm gonna object to leading. This is redirect, but it's still, she can't just lead. She can ask questions about my cross. She can't lead.
True.
Okay. Rephrase it.
Rephrase it.
Does Mr. Bellar give some advice about making training itineraries to the group?
Yes, he says it's important for them to be organized and to have a structure for the guys in the training to follow.
Okay, so even though a few days earlier, he's talking about how he wants to be defensive, he goes to train the offensive guys. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Cross.
Yes, please. Thank you, Honor. Start from the beginning of this. Do you still, Agent Impola, you still have exhibit 279, 280, and 281?
279?
Yeah, the ones we just played. I'm not going to go back, but this is recross. I'm sticking directly with what was just brought.
Okay. I don't have those printed out in front of me, but I'm
Man approach. I've got them for you. I don't need them.
that'd be great.
Take a look at these for me, please.
Yes, no problem. These are the ones we just heard.
Okay.
So I have them here.
Do me a favor, go through every one of those paragraphs. Find out where you can find Mr. Beller.
All right, so on 281, there's a statement by Mr. Bellar.
Yep.
On 280, the exhibit's just a statement by Ty Garvin.
Yep.
There's no other context.
What's Mr. Beller's statement?
Yeah,
Yeah. You heard it on the exhibit too. Sorry for getting too close.
no, you're good.
You heard it on the audio too. You hear a little yeah. You don't hear yeah, right? Yeah. You agree with me? You just heard the audio, right?
I'd hate to speculate on how the yeah is. I'll let everybody decide for themselves.
Okay. So out of all three of these exhibits the prosecutor brought to you, all this crazy talk, Mr. Beller says, yeah, right?
I heard agreement.
Huh?
I heard an agreement.
Oh, an agreement to you. I didn't ask you that. I said, you heard Mr. Beller say, yeah, right?
I did hear that.
That's the only thing he said, correct? Out of all three, let me rephrase that. Out of all three of these exhibits that were just presented and played for this jury, out of every recording, the only thing that Mr. Beller said was, yeah, correct? What Mr. Beller said.
Judge, he's got to let him finish the answer.
It's a simple question, Judge.
I know, but he was starting to answer and you kept talking.
So in the conditions you're placing upon this with limiting it to just what's on the transcript,
Correct.
I agree.
I'm limiting it to just what the prosecutor played to the jury. You would agree with that, right?
I would agree.
And limiting it just to the prosecutor's redirect regarding these three exhibits, only thing that Mr. Beller says is, yeah, right?
That's correct.
You think maybe this is why he said Adam Fox is crazy?
Is that a
I'll withdraw
question?
I'll withdraw the question. You testified a minute ago, the prosecuting attorney asked you to go to your exam transcripts, right? I know exactly where she went because I got it marked already. She asked you, when you were testifying about this crazy issue, she says, the question to you was, the meeting at the shop vac with Adam Fox, it's true that my client said to your informant on numerous occasions that Adam Fox is crazy, correct? That was my question to you. You recall that? The prosecutor reading that a minute ago? It's on page 182 of volume 2, not volume 1 that you have there.
Okay.
You got from me volume 1. That's from the day before.
Okay.
This is volume 2, and we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
If I approach, could you maybe look at it? Might refresh your recollection.
Sure.
I didn't make a copy of volume 2. I didn't know I was going to be getting into it, but I got it, and it's already highlighted for you.
Great.
Go to page 182 for me, would you please? And you can start right there at the highlighted point.
Yes.
You can go ahead and read it. Read the question and the answer, please. Read it out loud.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see the context here. There's a lot of objections going on. Make sure I understand this.
No, I'm only, let me make sure that
Let me make sure I understand which hearing this is.
Right. This is, the prosecutor just asked you about this.
Okay.
And her redirect about your comments about whether or not Mr. Beller said that Adam Fox is crazy.
But you want me to read
Yeah,
this?
right, yeah, I want you to read
Okay.
that part. Question and then answer.
Okay.
Q&A.
This is page 182.
Yep.
The meeting at the shop vac, SIC, that's spelling in context, with Adam Fox. It's true that my client said to your informant on numerous occasions that Adam Fox is crazy, correct? I responded, I'm trying to find that specific statement. I believe it's fair he made statements like that. I don't think that's mischaracterizing it, but I don't recall the exact times that happened.
Okay. Can you do me one more favor? Go to the very front of that for me, please.
Oh, is this a preliminary exam?
It is, Your Honor. I'm sorry for this is a preliminary exam, correct? This is the probable cause hearing
Yes,
that you testified to under oath, correct?
yes.
Could you do me a favor? Could you tell me what volume this is?
Says volume 2 right there.
Could you tell me what date it took place on?
Says March 4th, 2021.
So that would be the second day of your hearing, correct? From the first one. I'm sorry. That was,
Yeah,
that
I
was-
think
that was-
that's correct.
You've got the other one in front of you, right?
I've got
Volume
volume 1 from March 3rd.
March 3rd, which is the day before, correct?
Yes,
And I assume you were preparing for your exam each night. I would assume that for your testimony, correct? Is that fair?
sure.
So when you get done with trial for the day, you always want to, hey, what do we got up for tomorrow? And you want to make sure you're prepared to testify, correct?
I try to be as accurate as possible.
Absolutely. And so I assume you talked to the prosecutor about your testimony before you come to court, correct?
I don't recall any of my discussions with the prosecutor that night.
Because it's been so long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I didn't. It sounds like something I would do.
Right. Well, let's go back again to the one that happened the day before. Let's go back to page 248. Go back to lines 15 through 25. 15 through
Okay, so
25.
we're talking volume 1, 248.
Correct, volume 1, the one that actually happened on March 3rd, not the one that happened on March 4th, the one that happened on March 3rd, the date. Are you with me?
Yes,
Page 248.
yes,
Obviously, this is the first time you testified. This is the first day of this preliminary exam, not the second day, correct?
yes, sir.
The question I asked you is how many times did your confidential human source advise you that Mr. Beller said that Mr. Fox is crazy? How many times did he advise you that Mr. Beller said that? And what was your answer?
I'd have a hard time putting an exact number. But Mr. Bellard did discuss Fox being crazy. I think that's a fair and accurate statement, and it wasn't just one time.
Question, more than once?
Yes,
Question, that he thought Mr. Fox was crazy, right?
correct.
Gave unequivocal answers in that exam, correct?
I think that's fair.
And it was on March 3rd, correct?
Yes,
What the prosecutor just had you read a minute ago was your testimony from March 4th, correct?
No,
yes, sir.
so it's March 3rd.
Oh,
Oh, it is?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Really?
Yeah, page 182.
182?
That helps you.
182. You're saying that's from March 4th?
No, March.
You're saying it's from March 3rd?
That's what I have.
Is this, may I ask the prosecutor a question, Your Honor?
Go ahead. You guys just talk, make sure you're on the same page.
Yep. So this is the 182 that you're talking about, that you read, lines 9 through 15,
Yeah, that's the same.
and it's on March 3rd, correct?
Yeah.
Can you look at the front of that for me?
And this is a couple
You know-
of pages.
You know what,
out
Judge,
of
I don't like what's happening with Mr. Patrick up over Ms. Dottamani.
I'll step
I don't
back.
know, I don't like, and cross-examining her in front of the jury, very improper.
We could go out in the hall, talk about it, Judge. I don't know. Is
No.
there something you need?
Yes, I do, because you just said to the witness that those conversations took place on March 3rd, correct?
That's what I have here
Okay,
on my notes.
here we go.
I'll tell you what, you guys step out for
I'm
now,
not gonna
make
look
it
at
quick.
I'm
I'm
sorry?
already on the same page. Go in the hallway, work it out. I'm not
Okay.
gonna sit here and this back and forth.
You're gonna take 1 second for me to work it out.
Go ahead.
Let me go grab the binder that I had. Okay.
Oh, I forgot. So be honest.
Whenever you're ready.
I believe, and I just want to make sure that we're clear here, page 182 that the prosecutor said a minute ago occurred on March 3rd. The page 182 actually occurred on March 4th. Are we in agreement with that, Ms. Dadamani?
We are, Judge. I had some handwritten notes when I pulled out specific pages.
Fine, that's why I wanted you to just sort it out.
We sorted it out,
Thank you,
Judge.
Anna.
Thank you.
So what I had you read in court, what I had you read about Mr. Beller telling Dan that Mr. Fox was crazy and you testified numerous times, that was on March 3rd, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And what the prosecutor asked you a minute ago occurred on March 4th, correct?
yes.
Let's go back to this vac shack. I'm sorry, did I say that?
Got it?
I got it.
That shot back.
On redirect. I'm sorry, not redirect. Yeah, redirect. Ms. Dadamani started off with, they were looking for a boob judge, right?
I recall that.
You agreed with her, right?
I said I didn't have the transcript. I don't have the exact terminology, but
Approach, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Take a look at that. Go ahead and take the time to read through it.
this 267.
It's the ones that we just, no, the ones that we just read through. I mean,
Oh,
it's the one we just played.
okay, read through it.
Right through, you see boob judge in there anywhere?
There's nothing typed on this page that
Right.
says boob judge.
And just so for reference for the jury, that is a transcript.
He's just now testifying that this is a fair and accurate transcript. This guy has
It
to
is.
witness that because he doesn't testify.
Your Honor, they've been typing these exhibits themselves since day one. These.
And then I lay a
texts.
proper foundation, Judge, through my witness about whether it's a fair and accurate transcript.
I'll withdraw and I'll ask him in a different way.
Okay.
Agent Empola, you sat right here and I think I stood right about here. And I had an audio playing of the vac shack when they were talking about getting a peace officer and a judge, correct?
Yes,
In fact, you and I went round and round for a minute on that. You recall that?
went round and round for many minutes,
Yeah,
but yes,
Well,
I recall that.
and you were classifying as a citizen's arrest, correct?
Yes,
At first,
sure, yes,
eventually you acquiesced that it, in fact, they were trying to get an arrest warrant, correct?
yes,
You sat here, I don't know when it was, but it was recently when I played the actual audio for you and the jury, correct?
correct.
Did you hear one time in that audio where anyone in that room ever said boob judge or boob sheriff or any of that? You yourself, did you hear it?
Well, I listened during the break again, and there's something judge that it's not on here. I can't speak for the prosecutor, but we thought it was a reference to the boob judge. It's not very intelligible. when I listened to it again.
Okay, so you thought it was reference to a boob. You're not sure if it's reference to a boob, but the prosecuting attorney asks you, is it a boob, Judge? And your response is yes, right? You said yes, correct?
I said that I didn't have the transcript in front of me, but I recall the conversation. I've recalled numerous conversations about boob judges.
I'm not asking about numerous. I'm asking about
Judge,
shop
if
vac.
he can just finish his answer. He just said, there were numerous conversations about.
Thought he was done.
I did
Is there
too,
more you
Mara. I
want to add?
apologize.
There's one reference to what I thought was a boob judge. It's very hard to hear. When I listened to it in the room after the break, I'd have a hard time saying that it's boob or not.
Thank you. You also, there was reference about finding a peace officer, constitutional sheriff. I don't know if she said boob sheriff. She may have. I don't want to mischaracterize. The jury heard it. It was along the same lines of the conversation in her redirect. You recall her saying it too about a sheriff?
Yes, I think a constitutional sheriff.
Perfect. Could you please put up exhibit 164 again for me? You recall this exhibit?
I do.
Nicola? This is the exhibit that right down below the box. The title is Dan Abbott, Van Buren County Sheriff. You see that?
I do.
Dan Abbott. That is from Mr. Bellar on July 13th, which is after Wisconsin training, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he is sending him, that being Adam Fox, a name of Dan Abbott, who is a Van Buren County Sheriff. Are you aware if Mr. Abbott is or is not a Van Buren County Sheriff?
I believe he is.
Okay.
I've never met him.
If you were to look at the Michigan Sheriff's Association, would that maybe refresh your memory or make your testimony be concise?
I've never seen this, so it won't refresh my memory,
Well,
but
For what year is this
I
registered?
just took it off.
Well, I don't know if it's.
I can tell you I've been to the Van Buren County Jail and
Yeah.
I've seen Daniel Abbott's name at the jail.
Perfect. So you'd agree with me that as we sit here today, Dan Abbott is a elected county sheriff entrusted with enforcing the laws of the state of Michigan. Agree with that?
I think that's fair.
And back on this date, he was likewise the sheriff elected to represent the county of Van Buren, correct?
Seems logical. I don't have direct knowledge to that, but I'm not disputing it.
Okay. And in fact, were you aware that on July 11th of 2020, this very sheriff said he refuses to follow Governor Whitmer's executive orders regarding masks?
I did not know that.
Can we put 279 up again, please? 279, this is what was just played in the redirect regarding the Vac Shack audio. With me? Do you have a copy?
I don't have.
I'll give you one.
Yep.
What does Fox say on that last sentence?
What other things can we do? I mean, Pete said something about, going to their houses and shit.
There was some mention of 3 plan, right? I don't know if it was in this one. He's talking about the 3 plan, right?
Yes,
The 3 plan that was suggested on June 28th at the Wolverine Watchman training session when Mr. Bellar left the Wolverine Watchman, correct? We had the testimony already, Agent. You recall testimony?
I do recall the testimony and just kind of going through all the conditions of it in my head. So it did occur
Right.
on the 28th,
Correct.
and that is the day that Adam Fox showed up.
Yep,
And that is the day that Pete gave his ultimatum and proposed his 3 plan.
correct. And that is the day that Mr. Bellar left the Wolverine Watchman, correct?
After the training, he said he was going to leave.
Thank you. And in fact, he did. He started his own group, right, on July 7th. We heard all that, correct?
Yes, that's fair. Yes.
Thank you. I'm almost done, Judge.
long as you need.
Put up that timeline a minute ago regarding the mission statement, regarding the events from the clips that you listened to on the July 7th meeting where Mr. Beller formed his group, right? You got that timeline, right? I don't need it.
Number 227.
Yes. Fact remains, however you want to do these sound bites, that the mission statement of Mr. Beller at that meeting, his mission statement that was on the audio was, we are not going to be the aggressor in the state of Michigan, correct?
I'm not looking at the transcript, but that seems accurate.
Yeah, we just listened,
Yeah,
right?
yes,
We're going to be defensive, correct?
something to that effect.
We're going to be ready in case shit pops off. We got to defend others or the Constitution, right?
Correct.
And we're not about, pardon my language, ladies and gentlemen, fucking black bagging politicians, correct?
That was a different quote later in the same meeting.
Say, in the same meeting and in the same mission statement, correct?
I guess my recollection is the mission statement happened early on number 4. And then by number 11, half hour later, there was a statement about not black bagging politicians.
Yeah, just 1 minute, Your Honor. Bring up, so, hold on a minute. Your testimony is this black bagging politicians came up later on after the mission statement?
I'm just trying to remember the quotes. The transcripts have been added. Whatever the transcript says and whatever we've entered, that is what, that's
You just testified a minute ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the black bagging politicians came up after the mission statement was said, correct?
You'd asked me the sequence of when statements were made, and I'm trying to recall them. I don't have the transcripts in front of me.
Right.
So I'm not here to argue. If you have a transcript, I'd love to look at it and confirm whatever point you're trying to show.
Can I approach, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Could you bring up exhibit 159, please? Recognize that one? Is that what you got in front of you right there?
Yes, I've got 159 here.
Okay. So do me a favor, if you would, please. Start with the third one from the bottom where it's Beller. And he starts out with mission statement. Could you read that for the jury, please?
Sure. Mission statement of the group I'm trying to create right now. I'm not the aggressor. This will not be an aggressive group.
What does Bouchain say?
Okay.
What's Mr. Beller say next?
We are strictly defending, and that is it. We will not be, gnawing our fucking teeth. Not gonna be clustered at the capitals. We're going to be strictly down low, waiting for shit to actually pop the fuck where we go. All right, we need to protect the people. We need to protect this. We've got to defend the Constitution for this. We need to fight back on this. We're not going to be fucking black bagging politicians out of their cars, getting arrest warrants, going to arrest them.
Thank you.
We're not.
You can read it. I'm sorry. Go ahead and read it.
Okay. We're not dealing with that because we already know the fucking system's rigged. Even if we do it the legal way, they're gonna find a way to fuck around with it. Jared Bouchain stated, yay, yeah, and that's where I was with Pete's plan. Frank's stated, so where do we draw this line? When do we start? Jared Bouchain stated, well, that would be an open discussion about it. Beller stated, right, that's why I said this is a Knights of the Round Table type situation.
Which actually, Knights of the Round Table, that's where everybody discusses equally, correct?
It seems,
Is that what it mean to you?
seems fair.
So everyone has an equal say in what's going on at the round table?
Open discussion, I think, about when to attack.
So you would agree with me that on July 7th, when he said we're going to be like the Knights of the Round Table, there was no rank structure in his group, correct?
Seems
To
fair.
your knowledge?
Yeah, that seems fair.
Direct. Oh, okay.
I've just got a few, Your Honor. I'm
Go ahead.
fairly short.
Counselor, there's a couple of your
Oh.
exhibits here.
Thank you.
I want them to- Lost.
They will, there's so much.
Agent, I just want to clarify a few things if I can, okay? And these were
No problem.
brought up. Prosecution brought up about, I don't want to mischaracterize here, but she asked you if Munis would be considered urban or rural, correct? I mean, I think there was something along those lines. Would you agree?
Yes,
And you said that it was rural, correct?
yes.
And I believe I asked you yesterday, and you did not know, but I said, do you know what MOUT stands for? Do you recall that question?
I do.
And you said you didn't know. Do you know now?
I do not.
Would it surprise you if I told you that it stood for military operations in urban terrain?
No, that seems logical.
Okay, so if the military is doing MOUT training, do you think they go to downtown Detroit? Or do you think they build some mock-up off in a training area in the 10,000 acres of Camp Lejeune, we'll say, and that's where they train?
Probably do both.
But it would seem logical, right, that some of their training, that they're using a mock-up out in some rural area, correct?
Sure.
Okay, so the fact that these guys were training in Munis or wherever, right, it's not really relevant. Would you agree? The location?
I just think that it's very relevant because it means it's not defensive. They're not defending their own home. They're planning on going into a city to attack. That's what they're preparing for. So
Okay,
they're an outside agitator going somewhere else where there's unrest to confront somebody.
okay. But they couldn't possibly be going there to defend something?
I don't know how you could defend something if you don't know what it is. You know, if you're going there to fight the police, then you're clearly being offensive.
That's not what I asked, right? I mean, I'm not saying they're going there to fight the police, right? I think we've heard that they are going to defend liberty or defend the Constitution and right or wrong, or if the boo gets started off and whatever, and they feel they're defending something, right? It stands to reason, like we saw training with this car, we saw training in the mock-up house, right? We can't classify what kind of training is offensive or defensive, correct? Because again, that would be intent, would it not?
Are you asking if I can classify?
As a general rule, right? Can we watch training and go, this has to be offensive?
I think you can watch training and then make judgment calls based on your own life experiences and what you think is logical.
Okay. Agent, would you do me a favor, please, and bring up exhibit 103? Okay. And just so that we're clear, can you give me, I mean, I know we've talked about it, but can you just give me the briefest rundown of what this is?
Sure. So this is a transcript. It's an excerpt from June 8th, 2020. And this is one of those Facebook voice clips where you speak into it and then transmit it through Facebook Messenger. And this is from Adam Fox to Joe Morris.
Okay. And can you read that for me?
Adam Fox stated, "But if Barry said we have the same common goal, then I'm sure we do. Then me and you definitely need to sit down and talk."
Okay. Do you know, can you tell me what Barry said this common goal was to Adam Fox?
I don't recall all of their communications between each other. And I
Okay, let me-
can't speculate to what Barry Croft and Adam Fox are thinking in their head.
Okay, so do you have evidence anywhere that a transcript or anything that says what the communication between Barry Croft and Adam Fox was, where Barry seemingly identifies this common goal?
So Barry Croft is very outspoken in what his goals are. He regularly posts them on Facebook and tells his followers.
I'm sorry, and I don't mean to
Only
interrupt,
evidence I have.
but that's not the question. The question is, do you have evidence of any kind that documents what the common goal is?
And I do have plenty of evidence of Barry Croft's intentions and posts. He regularly posts them on Facebook. And I believe those are his goals.
Again, speculating, correct?
Followers.
Judge, objection. He's trying to answer the question.
No, Your Honor,
He
he's
asked
not
him-
trying to answer the question. The question is, does it exist about this specific common goal? That's been my question 2 times in a row. This common goal that he references, do we have evidence that says, hey, Adam, this is Barry, this is our common goal with Joe?
Okay,
And that's been my question 2 times in a row.
That's a different question, and I have no problem with that question.
Go ahead.
So same as I answered for your first question the first time is I can't tell you what was in Barry Croft's head or Adam Fox's head when they communicated these messages.
Okay, thank you. So in extrapolating that one step further, is it safe to say that you do not know, no, not speculate, not believe, know what that common goal is?
There's no statement directly attached to this, which I can point to for that common goal.
Thank you. Thank you. Agent Arliss, may I have 119, please? Exhibit 119. And if you have that, Agent Ipla, can you just, while he's pulling it up, give us the briefest rundown, if you have it right in front of you?
Yes, I have it, no problem. So this is a transcript of an audio call. This is from June 14th, 2020.
Okay,
So this is number 11 on the significant events timeline. And it is part of the phone call. This is the conference call where Joe Morrison calls Adam Fox.
okay. So Joe calls Adam and says something along the lines, right? I'm not going to read it, but basically, hey, we can, I'm assuming they mean get together on Thursday. I think we had testimony about a double date. I think it was called, if I'm not mistaken, right, on this Thursday?
Yes, that's a little bit later. Thursday here, this is the 2A protest on June 18th.
Correct. I apologize, and you are absolutely correct. But Joe's saying, hey, look, we can get to know each other a little bit, correct?
Correct.
Is it safe to say that obviously they don't know much about each other at this point, correct?
Never met in person before. I think
Okay.
that's safe to say.
So they're saying, hey, look, we'll get together. And Mr. Fox is absolutely, correct?
Yes, sir.
What does the rest of that say?
Absolutely, man. And then, I wouldn't mind getting out and doing some training with you guys. And then if you guys are on board, when we head to Steve's compound, you guys come out or there for the little FTX shoot with us.
And what do you know Steve's compound to be?
Well, I think the reference to Steve's compound is a reference to the Cambria, Wisconsin training property.
Correct. So at this point, is it safe to say that Joe Morrison and Adam Fox, this is still a feeling out process, correct?
Yes.
And would it be safe to say that Fox is saying, hey, look, man, maybe we'll get together, we'll do a little training, you come to Wisconsin? I'm paraphrasing, right? I realize that's not what it says, but is that your understanding?
I think the understanding is I'll train with you, you train with me, kind of a mutual invite.
See what's going on, correct?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe did not go to Cambria, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I want to just touch on 2 really quick short things, right? So we've, you know what, and actually I'm not even going to talk about this. We're going to scratch it. A minute ago, we had up here and I absolutely apologize, I did not write down the exhibit, but we had the transcript. They were talking about the situation, and the very bottom was Adam Fox saying, referencing Pete and the 3 plan, correct?
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes, this is from the back shack.
The vac check. And what's the date on that?
That's June 20th.
Okay.
2020.
But didn't you then also testify that they were bringing up Pete's plan from June 28th?
Yes.
So how did the 3 plan get addressed on June 20th if it was brought up and presented on June 28th training?
Well, I can provide my opinion, but it would be speculation.
Okay, so you don't have a factual answer to that question. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, Judge.
Anything? Okay,
Think we can excuse this witness now?
yes. I'm sorry about that. But after 7 days, 8 days of nonstop.
We're ready with our next one, Judge, if you want us to take them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Come on up here, face me, and I'll swear you in. And swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Got it. You can see. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Yep, my name is First Lieutenant Darren Green. My last name is spelled Green.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Thanks, Judge. Good afternoon, Lieutenant. Can you tell us how you're employed today?
I am employed currently by the Michigan State Police, obviously. I'm the post commander at the Lansing Post.
How long have you been with Michigan State Police?
Just over 22 years.
I want to take you back in time, if I could, to 2020, and particularly the month of April. Can you tell us what your assignment would have been then?
Yes, during that time, I was the first lieutenant in charge of the state security operations section.
Okay, and does that involve at all our state's capital?
Yes, probably the number one priority for the state security operations is to provide physical security for the Michigan Capitol building, both inside for the common areas and the outside square block that the Michigan Capitol is located on.
Okay, and as of 2020, how long had that been your assignment?
I started that job in October 2nd, 2019. So
Okay.
I've been on the job there for probably 4 or 5 months, whatever it is.
Okay, I want to take you back again to that month of April of 2020, and particularly April 30th. Would you have been working that day?
Yes.
Okay, and what would your assignment have been, or tell us a little bit about what you were doing that day?
That day, obviously with the contentious presidential election and COVID getting started, it was a contentious time. So there was a lot of rallies and demonstrations at the Michigan Capitol building. And we were aware of a demonstration that was going to take place at the Capitol building on that day.
Okay, going back into April of 2020, was it legal to bring a firearm into the Capitol if it was openly carried?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, was that an uncommon thing back then?
Not uncommon, no.
Okay, and on this particular date, tell us, if you will, about what time you started work that day.
I would have started probably 7 a.m. And I probably during that time with everything going on at the Capitol, probably worked well into the evening hours.
Okay, tell us if you will, and did protesters show up at the Capitol that day?
They did, yes.
Now, before this day, did you know anybody by the name of Joe Morrison?
I did.
Okay, when I say that you know him, and did you know him personally, or is this somebody that you could recognize back then?
I didn't know him personally, no. I knew his name.
Okay, how did this come to you, his name?
So during a lot of the demonstrations at the Michigan Capitol, we would bring troopers in from the surrounding posts. And one of those being the MSP Lansing post. One of those troopers, Trooper Rachel Ramey, had been mobilized to the Capitol for various demonstrations. And she brought Mr. Morrison's name to my attention.
Okay, I mean, without getting into what Trooper Ramey conveyed to you, after you learned that information, was Mr. Morrison somebody that you tried to keep an eye out for during your duties?
Yes.
Okay, how about Pete Musico? Had his name or some information about him come to you also?
Through Trooper Ramey, obviously she let me know that Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico were, I guess, related by marriage.
Okay, and had they visited the Capitol and had you interacted with either of them before April 30th?
I don't know if I don't know if I interacted with them prior to that date, but I knew who they were because of the information that Trooper Ramey had provided to me.
Okay, did you give, were you supervisory, did you have a supervisory role with regards to other troopers at the Capitol that were part of your detail?
Yes, I would have been, as a first lieutenant, I would have been the highest ranking MSP personnel at the Capitol. So I would have been in charge of the entire state police contingent that was present.
Okay, and how many troopers were there that day?
That day, probably around 40, I would say.
Okay, now, the information that you give to the troopers that report to you, I mean, do you give them any direction as to how they should interact with Mr. Morrison if they make contact with him or see him?
Absolutely. The Michigan Capitol, I describe it as a beacon for democracy. It's the people of Michigan's house. It's a place where people come to exercise their constitutional rights, to let the government officials know, in their opinion, what type of job they're doing, things like that. So the direction I always gave our officers was anybody that was coming into the Capitol, our primary function was to provide a safe and pleasant environment, not only for the people that worked in the Michigan Capitol as far as legislators, but also the people that were coming to the Capitol on a daily basis as visitors. Just a safe environment where people could come and exercise their constitutional rights.
Okay, and that sounds like what your general order to them is, how to interact with the citizens of the state?
Absolutely.
Okay, now I'm coming to Mr. Morrison. Did you give them any more specific direction as to Mr. Morrison?
Yeah, because of some of the information that was relayed to me by Trooper Ramey, she had said that Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico might harbor.
Objection.
Judge, you know what I think here is, it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted as to what Trooper Ramey told Lieutenant Green, but more to explain why he gave the direction to his troopers that he did.
Overruled, go ahead.
That Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico might have anti-governmental views, and they might have a potential propensity for violence.
Objection.
That's pure speculation.
Yeah, can we approach?
Come on up. For the record, the other response will be stricken. Rephrase your question.
Sure, no problem. After speaking with Trooper Ramey, Lieutenant Green, were you concerned about Mr. Morrison?
Yes,
And were you concerned that he might present a threat?
yes,
And were you concerned about Mr. Musical?
yes.
And were you concerned that he may present a threat? Okay. What information did you give to the troopers that were working your detail that day about what they should do if they had contact with either of those two gentlemen?
Yes, I actually told my troopers that were assigned to go out of their way to make contact with both Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico.
And why did you do that?
Just to kind of de-escalate this situation, just to introduce themselves to those two gentlemen, to call them by name, to let them know that we knew who they were, introduce ourselves to them so they would know who we were, and just make each other aware of each other's presence at the Capitol.
Okay. Do you remember seeing them in the Capitol on the 30th?
Yes.
Can you tell us generally how they were dressed?
Would have been
And when I say dressed, I mean like what gear they might have been carrying.
body armor, like over their clothes, carrying long guns, like just kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like SWAT clothing or things
Okay.
like that, like tactical clothing.
On this day, on April 30th, I mean, were people allowed into the Capitol?
They were?
Okay, was there, I mean, COVID was alive and well back then, correct?
Yes.
Were there any protocols that people had to go through to enter the Capitol that day?
Yes, there was. We had a health screening station inside the only point of entrance into the Capitol, where we asked them the basic health questions about if they exhibited any signs of COVID, if they'd been exposed to anybody from COVID, those type of questions. And then we also had a thermometer that they leaned up against with their forehead in the general direction, and it took their temperature to make sure they weren't running.
Okay. Just another day at the office for you?
Well, not really. No, it
Okay,
wasn't.
and why do you say that?
Because during this time of the year, with a lot of things going on in the political landscape, it was kind of, I guess, Groundhog's Day, for a lack of a better term. There was a lot of things going on at the Capitol in that time period.
Okay, do you remember seeing Mr. Morrison inside the Capitol?
Yeah.
You remember seeing Mr. Musico inside the Capitol that day? Have you been advised as to a person by the name of Adam Fox before this?
Before that day, no.
Okay, fair enough. Tell us, if you will, after Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico gained entry into the Capitol there, I mean, what was the setting? What was going on inside the building?
There was I remember that day during that time frame, the House of Representatives was in session. And those that aren't familiar with the Capitol, there's the dome, and then the dome goes all the way down, and then there's the circular pattern that's called the rotunda. And then the entrance to the House and Senate chambers respectively is on the second floor off of the rotunda. The House being on the north side, the Senate being on the south side. And it seemed that once we let quite a few people into the Capitol, that a large group congregated in front of the entrance to the House of Representatives on the second floor off the rotunda.
Okay, does the House chamber have its own security detail?
They do. They have they're called Sergeant at Arms for the Michigan House of Representatives.
Okay, would that be the primary body responsible for safekeeping the House members?
Yes, yep, they're the sole law enforcement MCO certified entity that has police authority inside the House chambers. We actually don't have any type of authority inside the House chambers, only the Senate police or the House police.
Okay, did your detail that day take up a position outside of the House chambers?
Yes, we did.
Can you tell us, the jury, why you did that?
Yeah, so on a typical day when the House of Representatives is in session, they might have between probably 8 and 10 security officers there. They wear red coats on the House side. And this was a typical day for them. Obviously, they're not used to having a large gathering outside of the house door chambers, so they were kind of inundated with, their small amount of numbers versus the amount of people that were in the rotunda. So we kind of gravitated up there at their request to provide assistance to them to make sure that the crowd that was gathered outside the house chambers was, I don't want to say kept under control, but they were just outnumbered and wanted more security there to help them.
Okay, tell me, or tell us rather, what you and your detail did to try to assist them.
We basically kind of set up like a horseshoe, in conjunction with the house PD was mainly behind us, but we kind of set up like a human chain to keep the crowd separated that was gathered on the rotunda from going up to the doors that led directly into the house chambers.
Okay, did it appear that some people wanted to breach that doorway? Now, when I say breach, I mean, wrong term. Did it appear that there were people that were on the rotunda that wanted to enter the house chambers?
Yes.
Okay, and are these people armed?
Yes.
I mean, in terms of, can you give the jury some idea of what percentage of this group that's up on the second floor rotunda outside the house doors? What percentage of the group is armed?
I would say probably around half.
Okay, can you describe, what's going on there as you and your fellow troopers are in the horseshoe, standing a line between them and the house chamber?
The crowd was chanting, I don't remember specifics, but I remember in general, it was their frustration with the governmental process, frustration with or anti-government comments, things like that, just frustration with what was going on behind the doors leading into the house about the governmental process and their frustrations with what they felt was being done or what was not being done.
Did you think there was any attempt to incite any of your troopers into violence?
Objection, speculation.
He was there. You can talk about it.
Describe it.
Okay.
We were being called names, Nazis. We were being yelled at that we weren't upholding our oath to the Constitution. Being called like Governor Whitmer's like henchmen, things like that. Just that we were acting on behalf of the government, which obviously these people in the rotunda didn't agree with how it was being run.
Were they swearing at you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Judge.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I asked if they were swearing at.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. I
You used all the
apologize.
others, but never said anything about.
Anybody ever talk about, 2 steps forward or push on?
I remember specifically there was one time a gentleman called out amongst the chaos and got the attention of the crowd, but he counted 1, 2, 3, and then yelled push.
Okay.
I was standing probably within 7 to 10 feet of him. I made eye contact with him and I pointed directly at him and I said, don't do that again, because we don't want a riot on our hands, because it felt like it was moving towards that type of event.
And let's talk about that a little bit, Lieutenant Green. I mean, was this a regular day at work for you?
No, it was not.
You said you've been on the job for 22 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, give us some perspective of what was going on that afternoon while you're there.
It was just absolutely intense. It was bordering on anarchy, a riot, just a situation that was a 55-gallon drum of gasoline, and the people that were in the rotunda were holding the match. Like it could just explode at any moment was what the feeling was.
Can I approach the witness, please, Judge?
Absolutely.
44. These are already admitted. I'm gonna show you it's been admitted as exhibit number 44 on behalf of the people. Is that look familiar to you?
Yes.
We'll wait for the screen. See anybody here that you recognize?
I do. I recognize the troopers.
Okay, and is Trooper Rachel Ramey in this picture?
Yep, she's right at about 1 or 2 o'clock there, the blonde hair, the mask on, and the hair in the bun.
Fair enough. And the people that she is facing and the other troopers, are these the people you described to us who were up against the House chambers?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you exhibit 45 here. You recognize that person?
Oh, wait. I do. The person on the left there is Mr. Musical.
And he was there that day, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And showing you exhibit 46. You recognize that?
I do. That is myself there on the right, and the person there on the left whose arm is in the middle of the screen is Mr. Musical.
Okay, he's got something on that right hand. Can you describe that if you know what it is?
It appears to me to be a cell phone.
Okay, where is it pointed?
It would be pointed on the right side of my chest or shoulder area.
Okay, and what's displayed there on your uniform?
On that particular area of my uniform is my name bar, which gives my first initial, my middle initial, and my full last name.
Okay, thank you very much. 1 minute, if I may, Judge. Lieutenant Green, thank you very much for your testimony. I will yield the witness, Judge.
Who wants cross?
I'll go first, sir. I'll be quick.
Lieutenant, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Said you've been on the troopers 22 years, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, give or take, right? I'm not going to impugn you by saying you're my age, but I tend to look at and I think, well, we're probably maybe in somewhere in the same generation, wouldn't you say? Give or take?
I think we both have gray hair.
Okay, we both got gray hair. Fair enough. I said, I'm not going to put you out there as my age, but we're going to say that, right? And would it be safe to say that the manner in which things have conducted themselves in your 22 years have changed? The way you do your business.
Absolutely.
Correct? We got a lot of technology going on here, right? But I'm a pen and paper guy, right? This is what I do, right? Paper never refused ink, okay? So I'm just curious. And I'm going to kind of work backwards here just briefly, but on exhibit 46 that the prosecutor just showed you, and Agent, can we bring that back up please for me? This, I believe, is the photograph, right? You said this is Mr. Morrison?
Yeah.
Right? And he's got, you said you believe his cell phone in his hand?
No, I'm going to object. That's not what he said. He said that was Mr. Musico.
I'm sorry. That's correct. Mr. Musico.
Yes.
Thank you. So Mr. Musico's here and he's got what you said you believe to be his cell phone, correct? And you testified that it was pointing at the right side of your uniform, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Ralston asked you what's on the right side of your uniform and what is?
Well, my name bar and then my whistle chain.
Okay. Can you tell me by looking at this, is he videotaping or is he photographing?
I can't tell from that picture.
Can't tell. Can you tell me if he's capturing your name bar?
I couldn't say yes, no.
Okay. What is the purpose of the name bar on your uniform?
To be able to allow people to identify me.
Okay. So would you agree with me that in today's day and age, most people don't go to this to remember things anymore, right? They don't go to a pad and paper to write it down. Many things are just captured this way. Is that correct?
I think that's fair.
Okay, so if Mr. Musico is trying to remember who you are, is it that outrageous that he takes a photograph of your name bar?
No,
Okay, fair enough. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning of your testimony. This was, I believe you testified April 30th. Is that correct?
yes,
And I think you testified that on April 30th, you were already aware there was going to be a demonstration at the Capitol. Is that correct?
yes.
How did you know this?
This part of my responsibilities was to work with our Michigan Intelligence Operations Center and to be able to, have them go through social media and things like that and pick up chatter about events that might take place at the Capitol.
Okay.
So, that's probably a possibility of why we were aware of that event that day.
Okay, so that's a possibility, but you don't have a direct recollection as to how
I
you
don't
knew it that
remember
day?
how, no, not, I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
It could have been, a lot of times the groups at the Capitol actually call Capitol facilities and actually pull a permit to be able to have their group be at the Capitol to protest, and it's actually put on the Capitol schedule.
Okay. And would you agree with me that in this time frame that we're referencing, and I don't mean, a specific time like the 30s, but that span of time was quite contentious, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Across the country.
Sure.
And I believe you testified, and correct me, I don't want to mischaracterize, but I think you even referenced that this was a contentious group. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you testified, well, let me ask you this. How many people, if you know, were there?
I would have to guesstimate or take my best estimate.
All right, I don't want you to do that. You said there was quite a few.
Yeah, it was in the hundreds.
Hundreds,
Yes.
a large group. Okay. So you testified, I believe, that Trooper Ramey, and if she has a rank, I apologize for not using it, but Trooper Ramey brought Mr. Morrison's name and attendance to your attention. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Also brought Mr. Musico's possibility of being there, correct?
Yes.
Were these, out of this hundreds of people that attended, were these the only two people that were brought to your attention that day?
No, there was others.
Others?
Yep.
A large number of others?
Not a large number.
But there were others. These were not the only two, correct me if I'm wrong, that were singled out and said, hey, Lieutenant, these two guys might be at this protest today.
That's true.
There were more?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you testified that they had on body armor,
Yes.
legal or illegal to wear that in the Capitol building?
Legal.
May we approach?
Well, no.
Thank you, Your Honor. I apologize, Trooper. I don't. Okay, so we were talking about other people being brought to your attention, correct? And you said that there were other people identified as attending. Is that correct?
Yes. Both.
Okay, and then.
Both individuals and people that were affiliated with certain groups, I would say.
Okay, fair enough. And then I asked you about the body armor, and you said completely lawful to wear inside the Capitol, correct? And we heard you testified, I believe, that there were people carrying long guns. Is that correct? Lawful?
Yes.
And you said out of this, and I think you said hundreds of people, about half of them were carrying guns, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any knowledge that, and one way or the other, this is a question of you have knowledge, when Mr. Morrison came to the Capitol, did he comply with all of the regulations to come in with the COVID protocols that were in place?
Yeah, I would assume we had troopers at the only entry point, and we were only allowing people that agreed to go through the COVID-19 protocol and pass to come in. I might not have physically been there, but he would have passed that checkpoint, yes.
Okay. And so if you know, right, and you were the commanding officer of this detail or regiment or whatever, however they're classified, right? What was these troopers at the door? What was their instruction if somebody refused to comply?
They were going to be told that they couldn't come in.
Okay, so they were going to be prohibited from entrance.
Yes.
So it's safe to presume that if Mr. Morrison was there, he had complied with whatever he needed to comply, correct?
Yes.
And again, I understand you said you were not at the door, you were not at the checkpoint, but if in fact these people are inside, the instruction of the door guards were, can't come in without it.
Yes.
And you said that they had to, was it a series of questions that they had to answer?
It was, to the best of my recollection, maybe 3, 4, 5 at the most questions.
Probably something along the lines of, have you been exposed to COVID? Have you been sick? Have you had this?
Yes.
Stand here, let me take your temperature, go on in, right? We're not talking about invasive medical questions, right? Just the basic. I think we can safely assume most people in that time frame have been through those kinds of questions, right? So you said this day was an unusual day, correct? Now, I'm sorry, were you gonna,
Go ahead.
is that correct? That was your,
Yes.
was it unusual in this, well, let me back up. How long have you been assigned to the Capitol?
At that time?
Yeah, at that time, how long had you been there?
It would have been 4 or 5 months since October of 2019.
Okay, so out of which would, let's back it up, right? At that point, 20 years of service, you've been there 4 or 5 months.
And actually, I apologize, so I get the dates mixed up. So just to be clear, I had been at the Capitol since June of 2019.
Okay.
My promotion from sergeant to lieutenant was on October 2nd, which is why I got the dates confused. But I had been in that first lieutenant position at the Capitol since early June of 2019. So at that time, I would have been there for about 10 months.
Okay, fair enough. And I appreciate that clarity. So when you say this day was unusual, are you referring to it being unusual to, at that time, 20 years of service, or unusual to your service at the Capitol?
Both.
Both. Had there been protests at the Capitol prior,
Yes.
similar to this one?
In some regards, yes. In some regards, no.
Okay. So then, was this day unusual in a span of what was a series of unusual days?
No, this one was more unusual than anything up until that point that I had experienced being at the Capitol.
Okay. was there anything that you can point to or tell me about that Joe Morrison did on that day that made this day an unusual day?
No, just other than being in the rotunda as a part of that group that collectively was making the atmosphere very tense.
Okay, and you said that there was a gentleman that you identified who got the crowd's attention, and I don't want to misstate the way you said it, but 1, 2, 3 push, is that correct?
Yes.
Was that Joe?
No.
Okay. People were shouting and calling you guys names, is that correct?
Yes.
And I don't mean guys, I'm not trying to be sexist, right? Again, I'm old school, right? So I apologize for that, but they were hurling insults at the uniform. Would you agree?
Yes.
In your now 22 years, is that the first time you've been hurled insults?
No.
Been sworn at before?
Yes.
Not overly uncommon for a member of law enforcement to have insults hurled at them.
Not uncommon.
And nothing further, Your Honor.
Who wants to go next?
I'm not gonna have any questions at all, Your Honor, so.
Johnson?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mr. Musical's attorney, okay? You have no evidence that Mr. Musical actually took a picture of anybody's nameplate, correct?
No.
And you have no evidence that he actually recorded anybody's nameplate, correct?
I don't.
Mr. Bell asked you those questions. And Farron, you haven't seen all the discovery in this case, correct?
I'm sorry, can
You have not seen all the discovery in this case.
I don't believe so, no.
Right, exactly. So you just answered Mr. Ballard's questions, but you don't know what he was. The picture that's in the evidence is somebody else's picture, correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Musical's in the picture.
Yes.
Now, the Michigan Capitol, I don't know if it's changed last time I go there, but it's open to the public.
Yes.
The rotunda is open to the public.
Yes.
Even when the legislature is in session, it's open to the public. Correct?
Yes.
You can go inside while it's open to the public, and there are viewing areas inside the rotunda.
There's not viewing areas that you can view inside the House or Senate chambers. You can go up one floor to the third floor, and if the galleries are open, then the general public could go into the galleries, but that's at the consent of the House and Senate police respectively.
Right. And one of the rules is you have to sit down while they're in session. You can't be.
Yeah, I believe that might be. I'm not.
And I think you already answered the question. Well, at least because I think they have changed the rule, but the open carry of weapons was allowed at that point in time.
Yes.
Okay. And this was a planned rally by some group, correct?
Yes.
Okay. They had gone through the entire process to plan the rally.
Yes.
Okay. And typically, was House in session during this protest?
Yes.
Okay, so it would have been up to Capitol security whether or not individuals would have been allowed into the rotunda at that point, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
that's the rotunda is considered a common area, and that's what part of our jurisdiction is at. Yeah.
And you can go in there armed.
Yes. Well, then you could. Now,
Yeah, no
now
problem. Yeah, they changed it now, but then you can go in there armed, right? And the individual that was screaming, I think he said screaming 1, 2, 3 push, was not associated with Mr. Musical that you knew of.
No.
Okay, and it wasn't Mr. Musical that did that.
No.
Okay, no further questions, yeah.
I'm just moving out of the way.
Oh, okay.
I have no questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect or?
No redirect. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, sure. Thank you.
Break.
Sure. Take a break. 15 minutes.
Thank you, Judge.
We're gonna take a break. Everyone, please be seated. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth.
I do.
Please be seated. State your name, spell your last name for the record.
Trooper Rachel Ramey, Rachel, last name is Ramey.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Ma'am, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Tell us your name again.
Trooper Rachel Ramey.
Okay, and tell us how you're employed.
I am employed with the state police.
Okay, Michigan State Police. And how long have you been?
7 years.
7 years. And during that time, what is your rank, ma'am?
I'm a trooper.
And prior to that, what kind of work did you do?
I was in the Marine Corps, so I'm actually in the Marine Corps Reserve.
Okay. And you've served in our armed forces, you said you're in the Marine Corps?
Yes, ma'am.
And what branch is that?
The Marine Corps.
Yeah.
United States Marine Corps.
Thank you. And how long have you been in the Marine Corps?
20 years.
All right. What is your current rank?
Gunnery Sergeant, E7.
What is a gunnery sergeant?
The way our chain of command works, you start off as a private, work PFC, Lance Corporal, Corporal, Sergeant, Staff Sergeant, Gunnery Sergeant.
Okay, so you're in a supervisory position, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are you in active duty? You're also a state police trooper, or are you a reservist?
I'm a reservist.
And what's the difference?
I'm not there full time, so it's just a part-time thing. So I will do 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer for training.
Okay, so at least 1 week a month of commitment, correct? You're
Yes.
on base, is that right?
Correct.
Thank you. And do you know anyone that's seated here in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Who is that?
I know Joe Morrison and Pete Musico.
Okay, can you identify them for the record? Tell us the piece of clothing they're wearing.
Joe was wearing the light green shirt with a tie with a beard, and Pete is wearing a light gray and a blue tie.
Okay, we'll just identify the defendant for the record.
So reflect.
Thank you. Tell me how you knew Mr. Morrison and in what time period you're talking about.
So I knew Mr. Morrison as Lance Corporal Morrison through the Marine Corps in the reserve. We both were at Engineer Support Battalion in Battle Creek. So we both were in the same company. He was in a different platoon, but we still were working together in the company.
Okay. And what were his duties on base when he was under your supervision?
He was with the heavy equipment platoon, so he worked with his platoon on heavy equipment. And I worked with utilities, and I'm a staff NCO, which means I'm in charge of the junior Marines. So,
Okay. When you say you're in charge of the junior Marines, are those junior Marines subordinate to you?
yes,
Was Mr. Morrison subordinate to you?
yes,
All right. And you have other Marines that you are in charge of?
yes, several.
And kind of how often, and what's the time period we're talking about here that you knew Mr. Morrison?
I think he checked in around late 2018 or 2019 early. So from 2019
Okay, onward until around what time?
till 2020.
We're talking about a period of roughly 2 years, is that right?
Yes,
Okay. And you said as a reservist, was he a reservist?
yes,
And so you said, how often would you get to see him?
once a month. Then the 2 weeks in the summer if we were on AT together, annual training.
Annual training. Okay, so once a month regularly, correct?
Correct.
And then 1 week in the summer, 2 weeks you said in the summer doing training.
Correct.
Thank you. And did you have conversations with him though about things other than your work as a Marine?
Yeah, we would talk about family things and things that were going on in our lives. I learned about his business that he had, chimney sweep business that he was working on. So some kind of like small talk into things because I took the time to usually get to know my junior Marines and see where they're at in their lives.
Why do you do that?
As a mentor and as a supervisor role, you want to make sure you keep tabs on your Marines. We have a lot of Marines that would commit suicide and stuff. You want to keep tabs and make sure that they're in a good mind space.
Okay. And so you said he talked to you about things like a business he was trying to start. Okay. Did he ever talk to you about his family?
Yes.
And did you ever like go out and drink beers together alone or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Did you have those same kinds of conversations with other junior Marines?
Yes.
And did he ever talk to you, Mr. Morrison, about his views on the government?
No.
Did he ever talk to you about his views on law enforcement?
No.
Okay. Did he ever ask your advice on anything?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, he had had an encounter with another state trooper where he got pulled over and got a CCW charge, concealed weapon charge. And he was worried about the charge because it's a felony charge. And it was asking about what he could do for it. So I spoke to him and made the suggestion of trying to get it busted down to a misdemeanor for improper transport since he had a clean record. So, just trying to see what I can do to help him out with the charge.
Is that something you would do for other Marines?
Absolutely.
Okay, if they came to you with that problem?
Yes.
All right. And did he know that you worked as a state trooper?
Yes, it was well known at my unit that I was a state trooper.
Did he ever have conversations with you about a group he was trying to start called the Wolverine Watchmen?
No.
And you knew him in November of 2019, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And did he ever try to recruit you to anything like that, a group that he was trying to start?
No.
And were you ever aware that he tried to recruit other Marines in your unit for his group?
I did find out later on, yes.
Okay. Talk about your duties at MSP as a trooper. What is your regular duties as a trooper?
For patrol and investigation, go working the road.
When you say work in the road, what does that mean? Responding to calls?
Responding to calls, traffic stops, proactive and reactive.
And were you working in April of 2020?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your assignment back then?
I was attached with the Secured Cities Partnership, where I worked in the city of Lansing for looking for violent offenders and working the city of Lansing.
Okay. As part of your duties working for the city of Lansing, did you ever get assigned to work protests, specifically two that I want to bring your attention to? One on April 15th, 2020, and one on April 30th, 2020.
Yes, we worked all the protests.
When you say we, who do you mean?
My team, my squad.
Okay. Who's the supervisor of your squad at that time?
That squad was Sergeant John Fazio.
Okay. Did you also work with Lieutenant Darren Green?
Yes.
All right. And what was your job when you could get assigned to these protests?
So pretty much maintain the peace, see what we could do. We'd walk around, do walking patrols, and then he just make sure things would go smoothly as much as we could.
Okay. Did you ever get any orders from your bosses to interact with people?
No, not orders to interact.
Okay. Did you ever interact with people at the
Yes.
protest? Why would you do that?
Just they would ask us questions, things like that, and we had a lot of people like yelling at us and things like that. So.
Okay. And did you see Mr. Morrison specifically at a protest on April 15th? I'm going to go first through the April 15th protest, then I'll ask you about the 30th. But
yes,
on the 15th, did you see Mr. Morrison at a protest at the state capitol?
I did.
Were you assigned on duty there?
Yes.
All right. And was he there with other people?
Yes.
Did you recognize him when you first saw him?
No.
Why is that?
He had a full beard and everything. I just didn't recognize him. He wasn't clean shaved like I'm used to. So.
When you say like you're used to, when he reports for reserve training once a month, does he have to be clean shaven?
Yes.
Okay. And where was he when you first saw him that day?
Outside the front of the Capitol.
Okay. And did he have any special clothing on or anything on him?
Yes, he was wearing like a tack vest, tactical gear, and he had a rifle slung.
Okay. When you say a tack vest, is that body armor?
Yes.
Okay. And you said he was there with other people, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have a chance to talk to him?
Yes, I did.
All right. And who did you understand him to be there with?
His wife, his child, and then I met his father-in-law.
Okay. When you say his child, how old is his child?
I don't
Roughly.
recall.
Okay. Small child.
Younger, yeah, very small.
Okay. And who else? His wife, you
Wife.
said, and his child. Anyone
Yes.
else?
And then, yeah, his father-in-law, Pete.
Pete, and you're referring to Mr. Musical?
Yes.
All right. And where was Mr. Musical?
We were all out front, outside.
Okay. Did he introduce you to Mr. Musical?
Yes.
What happened?
He just said, this is who this is. It wasn't just introducing.
Okay.
I talked for a couple minutes, how things were going with their lives, and it was just small talk.
Okay. After this, and did you notice anything else during the protest? You just went about your day, went to the protest, or did your duty? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. After that, did you receive some information about Mr. Morrison's statements?
Yeah.
Did they concern you?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to take a look at exhibit number 36, which I'm going to hand you in just a second.
I keep opening this one. Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah. I don't think it is.
I'm gonna ask you to take a look at exhibit number 36 and tell me if you recognize it, okay? Okay. And there might be multiple pages, so you can shake them out and see.
Okay. Yes, I recognize it.
Okay, and what is it?
This was screenshots of postings that Morrison had posted on Facebook that one of my other Marines had sent to me. So one of my other Marines, who was a staff sergeant also at the unit, sent me these messages and said, hey, I think we need to do something with this.
Okay, and did you read the messages?
I did.
Did they concern you?
Absolutely.
How come?
There was just like threats towards law enforcement and just talking about, I mean, at one point even says that this is domestic terrorism.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna move for submission, Judge.
I would have no objection.
No objection, Your Honor. No objection. 36 is admitted.
Thank you. You can put it up, please. If I understand your testimony, these are screenshots that were sent to you, correct?
yes.
Okay. Be able to see a little more in a second. It gets brighter time. I want you to take a look at the first section that we're gonna zoom in for you. That first box, and if you could tell me what that says.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so Joe Morrison types, John Novak. We came pretty close to getting arrested, pounding on the doors and fucking with MSP. Some bitch sergeant had to get his CPT and they had 6 of us surrounded from all sides, outnumbered, but we stood our ground.
Okay, CPT, is that an abbreviation for captain?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay, all right, do you have captains in Michigan State Police?
Sure do.
Thank you. Okay, the next section, please. Tell me about this.
Yep, Joe Morrison wrote John Novak again. You talk about the squared area, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from, but we do not have the popular support yet to engage in an insurgency. It's getting there, but not yet. All the insurgencies run off civilian aid, Taliban, Van Kong, Al Qaeda, and the Patriots.
And why was this concerning to you?
It's just the fact that they're talking about insurgency and talking about that they have plans to actually further this. So,
Did it concern you that they cited the Taliban,
Yeah,
Viet Cong,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
Al Qaeda? Okay, thank you. The next section, please.
all right, Joe Morrison wrote Charles Simmons, true. As I've said before, we need more populist support.
And the next section, please.
He says to Quentin Vogel, who actually I do know this is another Marine from my unit. Joe Morrison, this is literally domestic terrorism. You're posting it publicly on Facebook.
This is actually Quentin Vogel is a person that is a Marine in your unit.
Yes.
A junior Marine to you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You can take that. Okay, so you see this information, what do you do with it?
So when I received this information, I took it over to our MIAC, that's our operations center for the state police. And I took it to them and had them look at it and go from there.
Did you do anything else, like write a report about it?
I did. I typed up a report about it.
It seems like a pretty serious thing for you to advance this information to the Intelligence Operations Center of the state police. Did you make that decision lightly?
No, I mean, this is uncharted territory for me. I wasn't familiar with it, but I knew that it was above me, above my pay grade. So I knew I had to take it over to somebody that could deal with it appropriately.
Did you ever try to like reach out to Mr. Morris and say, hey, these are concerning statements and I'd like to talk to you?
Negative, no.
Why did you not do that?
I didn't feel like it was my place. I didn't want to tip them off either. I mean, I knew this had to be dealt with, but it wasn't gonna be from me.
Okay. So you're giving the information to people at the Intelligence Operations Center, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna just hand you exhibit number 35. Look at that. Recognize what that is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's an email I sent to the MIAC about this incident.
Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna move for its admission, Judge.
Any objection?
Objection.
I have no objection.
I'll go back to my standing objection on this one.
Okay, 35 is admitted with the standing.
Did you work the April 30th, 2020?
Yes.
All right. Did you, I'm gonna ask you to put exhibit number 44 up, please, Agent Harris. You recognize yourself in this picture?
Yes.
And where are you?
I'm right in the middle there with the blonde hair and the mask.
Thank you. And what was your duty that day? What was your assignment?
Like all the other protests, we were pretty much there to try to maintain the peace, but at that point, we were made a line in front of the House of Representatives to prevent anybody from going in,
And why were you trying to prevent anyone from going in?
because they were trying to get through.
And when you say they, who do you mean?
This group of all the other people that are in front of you in the picture.
Okay. And kind of what was the scene that day inside of the rotunda? Was this like other protests you had?
No,
Okay, what was different about this?
it was very hostile. There was people screaming and yelling at us in our faces, calling us names and just like spitting at us. It's like they were so close to us in our faces and then pushing us like towards us to get through.
And when you looked out into the crowd, what did you see? What were your observations of the crowd?
Angry, just several people like yelling at us. Firearms on firearms.
Did you see Mr. Morrison?
At that point, no.
Did you see him at any other part of that protest?
Yes, yeah.
Tell me about that.
I could see him when I was on this floor. This is a little higher on the, I believe this is the second floor, third floor, but I could see him down on the first floor, getting pictures
Okay.
with his friend.
Was he again in his body armor
Yes.
with his rifle?
He was in a group.
Take that down. And was he with a group of people at all?
Yes.
All right. And who was he with?
I don't know their names.
Okay. But there were others with him,
Correct.
right? Did you see Mr. Musico at that protest?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I ran into him a couple times. When I was doing my mobile patrols, when I was walking around, he confronted me at the front of the Capitol.
Tell me about that.
He came up and got in my face and said, and I quote, "I don't care if you're a fucking Marine, I'll kill you."
I don't care if you're a fucking Marine, I will kill you.
Yes.
And when you said he got up in your face, please describe that for us.
He was just got like right next to me, like right in my face and was yelling at me.
Would
And
you-
nobody else was around. It was just him and I. He got in my face right in front of the steps of the Capitol and said it to me.
Okay, and how far away from your face was his face?
Probably about like 5 to 8 inches. I'm not real. I'd say
And
about,
would you categorize his behavior in that moment?
he was hostile. He was angry. I could tell he was very angry with me.
And had you had any sort of issues or encounters with him before that?
No.
Just met him that one time?
Well, I met him that previous protest,
Yeah.
but I mean, I'd never had any like conversations with him or anything like that.
Okay, so he just walked right up to you, got in your face and screamed at you, "I don't care if you're a fucking Marine, I will kill you."
Yes.
Okay. Nothing preceded that, any other sort of confrontation with him?
No.
What did you do in response?
Well, I didn't do anything. I just walked away. I was with one of my other partners was pretty close to me. We just continued walking around. And we're kind of used to having people yell at us in our faces. So
Was Mr. Morrison around when that happened?
no,
Did you have any more contact with Mr. Morrison after this time?
after that protest or, yeah, I think I would see him and just like say hi. He always greeted me with the greeting of the day saying, "Good afternoon, Gunnery Sergeant," or very formal.
Did he eventually stop showing up for reserve duty, his once a month commitment that he had to do?
Yes.
Tell me, when would that happen?
That was right around when the protest started in April. So it was kind of weird because we were doing a lot of virtual drills, but you still had to show up virtually. But then we had him in person too, and he didn't show. So then we would try and contact him, to see why he wasn't coming to drill. So we do that for every Marine who doesn't show up.
When you say you tried to contact him, in what forms?
So for the Marine Corps, we do this thing called the UA contact sheet. It's literally the first part of the day when you get there at 0730. You are required to try and contact them, whether you try and call them, and if you can't get a text, anyway, voicemail, And we document all of that. So anytime you try to make contact with them, you document it. So, and if you can't get a hold of them, you go with next again, trying to contact their parents or whatever and see what's going on, why they're not answering and why they're not at drill.
Okay, so did you call?
Yes.
Did you leave messages?
Text, yes.
No response? And was this around the time where you forwarded that information over to the Intelligence Operations Center?
It was after.
It was after that?
Yeah, because I sent that the information on the 16th and it was after that you went, you read.
Okay, and you said,
Unauthorized absence.
thank you. UA is unauthorized absence?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you sent the information and then he stopped showing up?
Yes.
I think that's all the questions I have for you right now. I'm gonna have the defense attorneys are gonna ask you some questions.
Ross? Thank you, Your Honor. Ramey, good afternoon. And I just want to clarify for the jury, because I think it was misstated, or maybe I just misheard it. How often do you show up for reserve duty?
1 weekend a month.
One weekend, right? Not 1 week.
No, one
a
weekend.
month.
Correct.
Okay, that's perfect. And I believe you testified that you have a mentor relationship with Mr. Morrison. Is that correct?
Yeah, as I do with all of my junior Marines, I try to.
How many junior Marines do you have?
Depending on the time of the, I mean, I've had up to 200.
200. In your mind, what does mentorship mean?
Just communicating, talking,
Communicate.
keeping tabs on them.
Keeping tabs on them, like if they're showing up, or reaching out, giving them guidance on their life?
Both.
Okay. What kind of guidance did you give Mr. Morrison on his life?
I encouraged him when he was trying to start his new business, and I had him talk about it.
Did you tell him how to start his new business?
No.
Did you give him advice on finance for this new business?
No.
So you just said, hey, you're starting a new business, good job?
No, I offered, I said, if you ever need any financial help, I can help you out.
Okay.
I said, if you ever need anything, let me know.
Did he take you up on that?
No.
You make that offer to all 200 junior Marines?
The ones that asked, yeah.
So if all 200 showed up and said, hey, I need some finances, you just whip out your checkbook and pony it up?
No.
What made Mr. Morrison then different that you were willing to give him money?
He approached me and talked to me, so.
But he didn't ask you for money, did he?
No, he did not.
Is this commonplace in a reserve unit where they just get together and chat?
Yes.
Was he were you in his direct chain of command?
As a gunnery sergeant, yes.
So, but he was in a different platoon.
It doesn't matter. The way chain of command works with the military, you render orders to anybody above you.
Right. I get that. I was a Marine.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Was he in your direct TO, table of organization?
He was for our annual training. Yes, I was a company gunnery
For
sergeant.
the annual training?
Yep.
Now, when did you join this unit?
2003.
2003. And you testified that Mr. Morrison joined in, I think you said 2019?
I wasn't positive, like late 2018 or 19. It might have been early 2019.
2019. So, and this occurred in 2020. So how many annual trainings did he attend?
I attended one with him. It was a
Okay.
home-based annual training in Battle Creek.
Okay. Would it surprise you if he joined that unit in 2015?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Would it surprise you if Mr. Morrison actually joined that reserve unit in 2015?
No, I guess it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know.
So when you say he joined in 2018 or 2019, in fact, you really don't know, do you?
No, I don't know.
Mentorship. The exhibit that was shown, the series of Facebook posts and you read them, correct? Do you have it there in front of you still?
Yes, sir.
Can you identify for me how many times Mr. Morrison used the term domestic terrorist?
Well, he didn't say it at all.
Oh, he didn't. Okay. Someone just said, hey, this is domestic terrorism.
Right.
Can you identify for me in there where Mr. Morrison is advocating violence?
What do you mean by that?
Does he make some kind of violent overture threat in there?
Well, talking about being outnumbered, I don't know.
What does that mean?
Being outnumbered,
Yeah.
having more than the other one?
Okay, but what were they doing that they had more? Does it say?
No.
Okay. You said that you saw Mr. Morrison, correct me if I'm wrong, at the Capitol on 4/15, is that correct?
Yes.
That was the first.
Yep. Yes.
You
that's
saw him
the first
twice, right? 4/15 and
one.
4:30?
I saw him a couple times, more than twice.
Okay. Well, you saw him on 4/15,
I
is that
did.
correct?
Yeah.
And you said he had his wife with him?
Yes.
Child?
Yes.
Introduced you politely to Mr.
Yes.
Musico?
Yes.
Was he wearing his tactical body armor?
Yes.
What law was he breaking that day?
No law is breaking.
Okay. He was polite to you,
Yes.
respectful,
Yes.
treated you as the rank he understood you to be. I believe you testified. Is that correct? Then you saw him again on the 30th. Is that correct? You didn't interact with him on the 30th, did you?
No, he said, we talked, just said hi.
Just a brief pass,
Yeah.
right? But the picture we saw of you, was that in the, and I've not been to the Michigan Capitol. So is that the rotunda?
That was on the second or third floor up by the house.
Okay. But you didn't see Mr. Morrison involved in that crowd then, did you?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of any laws, any charges that were brought against Mr. Morrison on either 4/15 or 4/30?
No.
Do you know when the Capitol put in place? Well, let me back up. Did you see him outside or inside the Capitol on 4/15?
Both.
Both.
Wait, on 4:15, I'm sorry.
On 4/15,
No, I saw him outside.
just outside. So on 4/30, you saw him inside the Capitol.
Correct.
And that was after they had put the COVID protocol in place at the door?
Yes.
Okay. And again, just to reiterate, right, you know of no laws that he violated any of these times he was at the Capitol, correct? In fact, would I be correct in saying that the only time you know Mr. Morrison was arrested and charged with anything was the CCW charge, the carrying concealed weapon charge that you referenced, right?
Correct.
And he said, hey, Gunny, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Correct? Paraphrasing, right?
Yeah.
Not putting a quote, but,
No, that's correct.
and you said, hey, you got no record, correct?
Yes.
Isn't that what you testified to?
Yep.
He had no record. Maybe we can get this bumped down to a transport, illegal transport, right?
Improper transport. Yes.
Improper transport. Is that what happened?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Is that a standard resolution to such a case?
No, not necessarily. It would be CCW. It's a felony charge. It just
Right,
depends
but he
on the
didn't plead to a felony, did he?
No, no.
He got a misdemeanor.
Correct.
Generally, if there's some kind of aggravating circumstance, would you agree that it's probably not going to get reduced down to a misdemeanor?
I can't say generally because I'm not sure. It just depends on where it's.
How many CCW cases have you made?
Me?
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Hundreds. How often do they get reduced down to unlawful transport?
Yep. I guess I don't have statistics, but not very few, and not very many. I mean,
Okay. If you put in, hypothetically, if you stop somebody for,
Judge,
Objection, hypotheticals.
Ever stopped somebody and ended up charging them with CCW?
Yes,
Does that make you the officer in charge of that case?
yes,
Prosecution can consult with you?
yes,
If there was something aggravating, would you relay that to the prosecution?
yes,
And does prosecution normally consult the OIC as to an offer?
Judge, objection. We're like so general here.
It's not general. She's made hundreds of these arrests. She's the officer
So
in
then
charge.
he's
I'm
gotta lay a
asking,
foundation.
can I finish, please? I'm asking if she has been consulted. If it's standard in her understanding in her arrests, if she is consulted by the prosecution.
Judge, that's a fine question. That was not the question I was objecting to. I'll sit down.
You can go ahead and answer.
yes,
They do consult with you? And again, if there was something aggravating, you tell them. And generally, would it be your understanding that if there was something aggravating, they probably wouldn't reduce it, would they?
I can't tell you how they rule.
And nothing further.
Mr. Johnson?
Ma'am, you said you know Pete Musical, correct?
I met him, yes. I don't mean I know him personally.
Well, because I want to clarify that you met Mr. Musical.
Yes.
You don't know him.
Correct.
Okay. This date in which you allege he said, I don't care if you're Marine, I'll fucking kill you. Was that the 15th or the 30th?
30th.
Okay. Were you wearing body camera on that day time? Okay. And this happened outside
Yep, yep.
and you
Front of
you say that he was alone,
Yes,
but you were with a partner.
yes. I had one partner that was near me. Yes,
Was he arrested after making that statement?
no,
Okay. And so there was nobody else with Mr. Musical when he made that statement.
no.
No further question.
You say you had a partner, about how far away was your partner?
He's probably about like maybe 3 feet behind me, but he heard it. He was right there with me.
Anything further from anyone?
No, Your Honor, Semper Fi.
Okay, any reason we can't dismiss this witness?
No, Judge, she's dismissed. Thank you.
Very much. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. State your name and spell your last name for the record.
David Ramirez, Ramirez.
Counsel?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Ramirez. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen on the jury how you're employed today?
I work with Flushing Township Police Department.
Take you back in time to March of 2020. What did you, were you working for a different department then?
I was.
In which department was that?
Morris Township Police Department.
Okay, how big of a department is that? How many sworn officers are?
Approximately 26,
Okay, how long did you work there?
25 years.
So, if my math is correct, you've been on the job about 24 years? 26, okay. Going back to March of 2020, did you know Dan?
Yes, I did.
Okay, how did you know him?
He was, his mother and father are my neighbors.
Okay, how long had you known him as of 2020?
Approximately 10 years.
Okay. Did you meet him after his return from service in the United States Army?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Dan and how well you know him.
Dan and I actually got together just to work out. I had a barn with workout equipment. Dan had an interest in working out, so that's just how I kind of got to know.
How often would you see him back in 2020?
Maybe once or twice a week.
Okay. And besides this activity that you worked out together, I mean, what I'm trying to get from you to the jury is how well do you guys know each other?
We go out to lunch every now and then. I come over to his house for a few minutes and just visit, but that's pretty much the extent.
Okay. Was there a time back in March of 2020 that you received a communication from him that caused you to go to his home?
I did.
Okay. What kind of communication did you get?
Dan had texted me and asked me to come over because he had some information to show me on the cell phone.
I'm sorry?
On his cell phone.
Okay. Tell me if you will, did you have a partner that day?
I did not.
Okay. Were you working that day?
I was.
Do you remember the date off the top of your head?
I'm sorry.
Was it March of 2020 though?
Approximately.
Okay. And when you went over there, what did Dan have to say to you?
Dan had mentioned that he had found some disturbing emails on a certain, texts and posts, basically asking for officers' names and residences.
Okay. Anything else? Any other information he was able to give you then?
He said it looked like from a paramilitary group.
Your Honor, I guess I would object, and only to the extent, first of all, it's hearsay, and only to this extent if this officer knows who they is. It's my only issue. They're attributing some messages, and I only want to know who the messages came from. I don't think he can testify to that, Your Honor.
Two responses. One, I think the objection goes more to weight versus admissibility, and the content of the messages is relevant. Number two, in terms of him moving the information to the task force officer, Orvis, which then gets it to Special Agent Impola, I think is an important connection for the jury to see how the information moved from Dan to the FBI.
And let me be clear, I don't object to the context or the content. I don't object to what's there. It needs to be generalized then, unless he can testify to who it came from. That's my only objection.
Can you testify who it came from?
I cannot.
Okay. You can continue.
Thank you. What kind of information did Dan provide to you there?
I believe he showed me on his cell phone, just, I don't know if it was an app or not, but it was information basically. These people were conversing back and forth with one another, basically asking for the names and addresses of police officers.
Okay, did that concern you at all?
It does concern me greatly at that point.
Okay, how come?
Usually people are no good at that point. We don't know what they're planning on doing to my residents or to anyone else's at that point.
Okay. Now, at this point in time, I mean, tell the jury what your duties are at this point in time for Mount Morris.
For Mount Morris, General Road Patrol, General Investigation. I also did accident reconstruction. Did most of our own follow-up investigations for crimes, frauds, things of that nature.
Okay. Had you ever dealt with a domestic terrorism case before during your career?
No.
Okay. And were you familiar with encrypted communication applications? Were you familiar with self-deleting aspects of those kind of encrypted applications? Okay. You saw this information on his phone with your own two eyes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you be as specific as possible? You've told us, number one, that the information, well, you told us the information you received was that individuals searching for police officers' home address.
And again, Your Honor, I'm going to object, and here's the reason. It's hearsay. We don't have the document here. I can't look at it to see who sent it. He doesn't know who sent it. If I had it, I would not be objecting. But we are lumping this together without any evidence to the court on who it came from.
Did Dan give you any other information about where this came from?
No, sir.
Yes. Did he say how he knew or how he received them?
I think he mentioned that he was on the internet, just like surfing, and I came across this link.
I didn't hear the answer. I'm sorry.
He said Dan was surfing on the internet and came across a link, and that's where he got the information.
And that would be hearsay, Your Honor.
Obviously not being, Dan's going to testify. So when we're trying to tell the jury what Dan did when he got the information, that's why this witness is here. And, you know, if there's going to be another objection, I'd like to know what rule of evidence it violates.
It violates hearsay, and here's the thing, Judge. He saw something. Dan told him. He told Dan what to do. It's pretty simple. And then Dan can get into actually what it was. What he's talking about is hearsay. On the internet, I can't cross-examine the actual page, and then I want to make sure that it doesn't.
Officer, let me ask you this. Based on what you viewed, were you concerned?
I was concerned.
And based on your concerns, did you think you had to take some action?
I did.
And what action did you take?
At this point, I took the information and turned it over to Sergeant Orvis.
Is there anything else you think you need to cover?
That's great. Thank you, Judge. Now, did you take any pictures of it that day?
I did not.
Okay, why not?
For one, I had a flip phone back then.
Okay. Obviously, there are other cameras that are available that you probably could have gotten. I mean, had you ever heard of self-deleting back then?
No, sir.
Okay. What you saw, though, that caused you concern, you saw with your own two eyes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You indicated you got information that it was about a paramilitary group. Was that something that you saw or something Dan told you?
That's something Dan had told.
Officer Ramirez, why did you take this to Sergeant Orvis?
I figured it was something that was kind of significant, you know, people looking for officers' names and addresses. I figured if I gave it to the sergeant, he's got contacts with the FBI task force, maybe they could chase it up and see that.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much.
Ross?
I have no questions.
Officer, good afternoon. I apologize. At this time, you were with Mount Morris, correct? Where are you now?
Flushing Township.
Flushing Township, okay. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Take me back to the day that you heard about this, okay? Dan called you on the phone?
I believe he texted me.
He texted you. And I believe you testified that you were working that day. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when you get the text, you took it as a call for service?
I just took it as a call. He wanted me to come over to see something.
Okay. Were you wearing body camera at that time?
No.
No body camera. Okay. So you drive over to his house or his parents' house. I don't know that you testified, but you go to meet him,
Right.
correct? And he shows you this information on his phone, correct? Okay. And I understand that you said you had a flip phone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How long at that point had you been a police officer? 24 years, is that correct?
23 years at that point.
23, okay. Been to many crime scenes in 23 years?
Yes.
I'm assuming your squad car has crime scene materials in it, is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm assuming it probably has a camera in there, is that correct?
It did not.
It did not have a camera. So had you responded to a call that needed photographs that day, what would you have done?
Probably would have called the sergeant with his camera.
Did you call the sergeant this day and say, come photograph this?
I did not. I took the information down.
You didn't think it was necessary to preserve it?
At that point, no.
Okay. Did you see any indication of anything? Strike that, let me back up. Did Dan show you anything on his phone other than this quest for law enforcement names and addresses?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so? See any machine guns on this page? Any explosives on this page? I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Johnson, anything?
Your Honor.
Thank you, officer. Next witness.
You know, what, can we approach for a minute, Judge?
Come on up.
And so this is going on YouTube, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna use a screen, Judge.
Pardon?
Dan's the next witness on the
Yeah,
screen.
we've got the screen in the other room. We'll set it
I don't know how
up.
to do that, but.
First, let's deal with this issue. Counsel, you asked for an in-chambers meeting.
Yeah, Judge, there's been, since the start of the trial, and we're prepared to offer sworn testimony on this from two different witnesses. There's been nonverbal communication between one of the jurors, who's a female, and Mr. Bellar. The communication has been in the form of eye contact, smiling at each other. Today, a little after 2:30 p.m., when we were at sidebar with the court, this was occurring again. And in fact, Mr. Bellar had a physical response. He clenched both his fists and shook them in an affirmative way, spoke to Mr. Morrison immediately afterwards. And we're very concerned about this juror. We are. And this has been, and again, this is something that actually one of the two witnesses that were prepared to tender would testify that this was actually occurring on the first day of trial and has been occurring during the trial too. So I raised this in the chambers, very concerned about it. And we bring this to the court's attention.
Your Honor, just so the court's aware, the shaking of the fist is because of Skittles. There was a sidebar. I was talking to your clerk. I was asking for some candy. She said, does your client want some Skittles? Because guess what? It's his birthday today. And oh, by the way, happy birthday. And she knew it was his birthday. And so she said, you want to give these Skittles to your client? She handed me the Skittles because I wasn't a part of the sidebar, because the sidebar had to deal with a witness that I could give 2 cares about. And I showed Mr. Bellar the Skittles from right over here in the corner. The camera will show all this. And Mr. Bellar said, you got me some Skittles. That's what that's about, Your Honor. Now, listen, I'm an officer of the court. I'm not going to try to say things on the record that aren't true. I have noticed her kind of looking at her. I had a conversation with my client regarding it. That's how I get proactive on things. I kind of saw it and I told him, he knows he's not supposed to be they haven't spoken outside of this. He's not winking at her. He's not doing anything to her to encourage her to, if she's got an issue, she's got an issue. But I don't think that's a basis to get rid of this juror. I just don't. And what they're classifying this is ridiculous. I mean, but again, I will not deny also that there's been a couple times she's walking, she looks at him, but I can't say what that's about. I can't say it's maybe she likes him, maybe she doesn't like him, maybe she's this, maybe she's that. There's no way of telling what's in the juror's mind and what exactly she's doing or thinking. And I haven't watched her 24/7, and I only see her when she comes in. I focus on witnesses in the court. I don't peek over at the jurors very often unless it's closing or something, but I could tell the court it was Skittles.
And Your Honor, I would just like to say that, number one, I find some of the things that have been said here totally inappropriate. This is a juror that both sides agreed upon. She is supposed to judge the witnesses and judge the defendants. She's got to look over here. I've had rape case and child molestation case where jurors have looked at my client with the testimony and shook his head, nobody complained. For people to suggest that simply because a young woman who's been tasked with the duty of evaluating somebody's guilt or innocence and is looking over here, it must be some sort of flirtatious or romantic involvement, is just sexist. She is supposed to look over here, judge the evidence, and judge these people. She's doing what exactly she's supposed to be doing. And this is one of the problems I've had with this case, from its inception. Again, looking at people and trying to interpret what's in their head. There's not even been an allegation that she's had contact with anybody on the defense side. There's not an accusation that anybody from the defense side has had contact with her. She is supposed to evaluate the testimony. People have laughed during this trial. They've smiled during this trial. They've, said good morning. There's all kind of stuff that happens in a jury trial that is now in its 7th day. I mean, I completely object to the court even addressing the juror. I definitely object to the court removing the juror, Your Honor. It's just trial. It's what's supposed to happen. She's supposed to look over here, judge these people.
And the other thing too, Your Honor, is we have no idea what her background is. We have no idea what her emotional level is. We have no idea who she is. And what I mean by the looks that I'm talking about is this right here. That's what I observe. I do not observe. Yeah, and I agree with what Kareem said. We get jurors over here shaking their head like disgusted or angry or whatever. I can't just go, whoa, you don't like my client because you look angry. You don't like my client because you're shaking your head no when I'm trying to ask you a question or talk to you. Judge, can we get rid of those two?
Isolated instances when that happens. I've seen that happen many times in the last 16 years sitting up here. Mr. Ballard, what have you got to say?
Just, Your Honor, I agree with brother counsels on this in its entirety. And I think to take sworn testimony on this is egregious, right? And then to say, well, we can't query her because she's somehow going to lie, right? Where's the basis for saying she's going to lie? Because she's a woman, because she's young, because what's the basis? She sat here, and I agree 1,000% with Mr. Johnson. She went through voir dire. She answered the questions. She has made anything that tells me she's not paying attention. I've not seen it, and I sit directly across from her. And I'm sitting here, and in fact, in order to watch the witness, I see her, and I see her sitting there, and I see her share the same facial expressions as the rest. Sometimes there's a smile, sometimes there's a grimace, sometimes there's an absolute bored look. And I share that with all 15 of them, right? They all will make these faces. You can look at any one of them. And again, my biggest issue with this is the assertion that if we ask her, she will just lie. Based on what? Based on, because she already took an oath to be a juror for this court. And just to say, well, if we ask her, she'll lie. I find that insulting on untold levels. And again, I agree with Mr. Johnson. This is the inception of this case. We're just going to look at it and go, this must be what she's doing. No.
Well, having sat through, I don't know how many trials, but a lot. I've never seen it. And it was enough that at first I didn't really pay much attention. But as time has gone by, I've seen her looking at your client, Mr. Kirkpatrick. I've looked over quick enough to see him looking right at her. I've seen her smile a number of times, and therefore, and because she is in my direct view, so I am often looking right at her while I'm listening to the witness testify. Sometimes I'm looking at the witness, sometimes I'm looking at counsel. But when I sit like this and listen to the counsel, I see her looking directly at your client. And a number of times I've seen smiles come onto her face. Not great big smiles, but more of a small smirk on her face, which is different than somebody who hears a significant act that's just occurred or hears that something, say, take a pedophile case, where they're hearing the details of what the defendant did. And you might see him go, or make some gesture as that comes out. It's enough that it's drawn my attention. I'm going to reserve judgment at this point, but I'm going to be paying close attention to it.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Your Honor, may I state that we did hear significant testimony yesterday. We heard about girlfriend after girlfriend of Paul Ballard, and one girlfriend, he had a date, and they spent the night together. And the way I took the testimony, it was their first date. I looked at him and laughed after that testimony. That was significant.
This is at all different points in the testimony.
Yes, sir.
It's not just, otherwise I wouldn't, if it was like I said, a case where somebody grimaced or it was something came up and she just was smiling, I wouldn't pay much attention to that. This is enough that it drew my attention to where I've been watching. I'm going to reserve judgment on whether I'm going to let her kick her off or not and continue to keep my eye on what's going on. I was
Thank you, Your Honor.
aware of it before you even brought it to my attention. Got a half an hour. We quit a number of days early. I want to keep moving.
Sure.
Oh, we gotta get this.
We got to get the screen up. We got to get things set up in here for
How hard
him.
is that screen to set up? Do you know?
I have not a clue. And victims' rights is gone for the day. It's 4:30.
And security, well, I had to swipe the jurors out yesterday. I walked down, there was a cattle call, so all I did,
I told you.
swiped the card and I held the door for them and they left and that was it. So, but they were
She was
stuck
actually
down
on the
there.
elevator and we were talking, or not talking, but it was a comment about being locked in, or I said, if you're locked in, all you gotta do is fire alarm button, it goes off for a few seconds, but the door unlocks.
Oh, well,
In case anybody gets stuck in here.
And again, I just, to put it out there, Your Honor, I understand the court wants to move through. And if it's gonna take time and we've got
Well,
this,
it's gonna take another 10 minutes probably to get stuff right, make sure I've never used it. It's usually used in child sexual abuse cases. You have a minor victim that does not want to be.
Sue says
Trying-
she's still here.
Does she
Yeah, she just-
come up real quick? See if this is something that pops right up there.
happy birthday. You look at the juries too, but don't ever make eye, just look at the jury as much as you don't make eye contact. Be mean.
What'd she say?
She doesn't respond.
No, I'm good. It'll dry on its own. Just won't put my elbow in it.
Right.
Sue, can you show us how to set that thing up?
I'm gonna turn this.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
And just for the record, the witness has been sworn. Is that correct, Judge?
Yes, he is.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us your first name, please?
First name is Dan,
Dan, how old are you today?
36.
Okay. Want to start off in 2020. Can you tell us what county you were living in then?
Genesee,
Okay. And well, let's back up a little bit further. Where were you born and raised?
Flint, Michigan.
Okay. And come a time that you joined the one of the military services for the United States.
I did
What year was that?
2005,
How old were you then?
19,
Okay. And what branch did you join?
the Army.
Okay. And when you went into the Army, what did you train to do?
So my military occupation specialty, or MOS, was a 13 Foxtrot, or a fire support specialist, or commonly known as a forward observer. So my sole responsibilities was indirect close air support, whether it was fast movers by aircraft, rotary by helicopters, naval gunfire, attack aviation, motors, artillery.
You were 19 when you joined, you said, right, in 2005?
That's correct.
How many years did you serve?
Close to 5.
Okay. Was there something that interrupted your service?
As far as
Were you injured?
I was, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was deployed to Iraq in 2007 on the end of the surge, and I sustained injuries from combat.
What kind?
So I had 2 IEDs, the roadside bombs, and an RPG, a rocket propelled grenade to the rooftop that we were occupying. And the injuries that I sustained were lower back. I fractured part of my spine, and I had a combat-related injury that resulted in surgery when I got out of the military. That resulted in titanium being placed from my knee down on my right leg.
The injuries you sustained, any difficulty or have any effect on your memory?
They did through the IED blast. I had a traumatic brain injury, so my memory poses some problems
Okay.
every now and then.
Can you give us a little bit more detail on what that might be? What kind of problems you encounter?
Just memory.
Okay.
I forget things throughout the day sometimes if it's not like a constant of like a re-habitual of not writing stuff down or in a direct pattern. I can forget things.
Okay. Do you have, does this memory cause, does this injury that you sustain cause you any false memories?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. I mean, what I mean by that is, there may be, from what I'm hearing, there may be times that you can't remember something, but what I'm trying to get at is any type of false memories that you've had an experience with during the course of your life.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Now, what year did you come out again?
Active duty was in 2009. I served a year in the reserve component, so 2010.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what you've been doing since 2010, please.
So I went to school. I got a degree in criminal justice. I managed a gym for a little bit of time. I got into firearms instructing in 2012. Taught CPL classes, carbine, shotgun, rifle, and then I've been working with the post office as a contractor.
Okay. And what do you do? Is your employer the United States Postal Service?
No, I work through a trucking company. We move bulk mail. So we move mail from the main hub in Genesee County to various post offices.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
That's about 2013, 2014.
Okay. And in terms of your skills that you learned in the military and maybe from before with firearms, I mean, have you maintained an interest in firearm use?
I have.
Okay. And I mean, you own firearms?
I do.
Okay. Taking it back to the year 2020 and in March, did you have any interest in joining a group to train with?
Like sole intentions to join a group to train? Or?
Well, no, I mean, did you have an interest there in March of wanting to train with people?
I did, yes.
Okay, and tell us a little bit what motivated you there.
They were pro Second Amendment and they had a place to shoot.
Okay, tell me if you will, is this a group you identified back in March of 2020?
It is, yes.
Okay, and how did you find this group?
The Wolverine Watchman.
Yes.
Through Facebook, I was scrolling through one day and it just showed up as a recommendation or a suggestion, kind of like when you follow various pages. I clicked on the group. They were pro Second Amendment. I answered a few questions that was on the page and I was accepted into.
Okay, are you pro Second Amendment yourself?
I am.
Okay, you're on Facebook at this point?
I was, yes.
Okay, and were you asked questions on the Facebook application?
There was 3 questions on the page before you could, it was a closed group, so it wasn't just like you could like the page and have direct access to it. You had to answer a couple questions that they had on their page, and then an administrator would either approve or deny you, and then you were allowed on that page.
Okay, and once you got on to this Facebook page, tell us a little bit about, what was the content like?
There was a post made that if you were wanting to do some training, that you should download the app called Wire, and they would do like a vetting process through there and allow you to get into their encrypted chat on Wire.
Did you ever heard of Wire before then?
I have not known.
Okay, did you have any problem finding it?
I reached out to Paul Beller. I direct messaged him. And
Well, no, I'm sorry, my question was, did you have any problem finding this application Wire?
no, I found that through the Google app, Google store.
Okay, and so when you get this Wire application, what do you load it on one of your computers, your phone?
I downloaded it on the phone, yes.
Okay, and you knew where to go because of the Facebook page, is that right?
Paul had instructed me to download the app called Wire. I direct messaged him and asked him to make sure which app it was.
Okay, so you tell us a little bit about what a direct message is.
So I just did like an instant message or a direct message through Facebook Messenger app. So one-to-one communication through person A and person.
Okay, when you say Paul, do you know Paul's last name today?
Paul Beller, yes.
You see him in the courtroom this afternoon?
I do.
Okay, can you point him out for us, please?
He's the gentleman wearing the white shirt with the blue tie. Or purple tie.
Identifying for the record, Your Honor, Mr. Beller.
Will so reflect.
Thank you. How did you know it was Paul Beller you were communicating with?
At the time, his name on Facebook was Paul Zacharias.
Okay.
We were talking on direct message at that time.
Okay. Did you later learn his name to be Paul Beller?
I didn't.
And was the Zacharias name that he was using his handle on Facebook?
It was, yes.
Okay. And so you get these instructions from Mr. Beller and as to going to the Wire app, is that correct?
He said it would be like a job interview. So just answer the questions, what they would be asking you.
Okay. Do you download Wire?
I didn't.
Okay. Do you go in for the job interview that was described to you?
I did, yes.
Okay. Is this all on the same day?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Do you remember today, the exact date that this happened?
March 7th was the messages between Paul and I on Facebook.
Okay. And when you load Wire and you get into a chat of some kind with the group?
Yes.
And what's the name of the group?
It was the Wolverine Watchman.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about, do you go into this job interview?
I do.
And do you know who's interviewing you at this point?
No.
Okay. Do you know if Paul Beller was on the Facebook page because you learned his handle, met him later, is that correct?
Right.
And when you're on the Wire app now, do you know how many people are interviewing you?
No.
Okay. Does the app show you any handles or nicknames or aliases of people?
If they're asking you questions, yes, their avatar will show up with the name that they're using.
Their what?
Their avatar. So if they have a photo of themselves or.
Okay. Do you go into this job interview?
I do.
And tell us what occurs.
They asked me a series of questions. They range from what my political beliefs were, ideas on the Constitution, experience and background that I may or may not have.
Okay. How did you answer these questions?
So my political views, I So that I'm a conservative, more libertarian. I like smaller governments. My background, explain what I did in the military, I've been deployed to Iraq, I sustained injuries in Iraq. I have combat experience, but I'm a firearms instructor. And they asked my views on the police. I told there was a lot going on during that time and continues to go on at that time. So I felt that we had an issue that needs to be addressed with both police and kind of homegrown discipline. And then they asked my views on the Constitution. I said I swore an oath to defend the Constitution, both all enemies, foreign and domestic. And Ty Garvin said that's good enough. It brought me into me.
Okay. Tell the jury a little bit, I mean, like, how is this happening, Dan? I mean, is this, are they speaking to you? Are these written questions? Are they coming, these questions coming one at a time, or are they in a package? Tell us a little bit about that.
It's kind of like a group text message, but you don't know who's sending you the messages until their name shows up. So on a digital app on your phone. And it's kind of like the old like AOL chat messages, like the chat groups that you go to. So you can't see any of the content until you talk first or on the vetting.
Okay. How long does that process take to go through that? I mean, for you to, just give us your best estimate of how long it took for you to answer the questions posed before you moved through the vetting process.
Maybe 5 minutes.
Okay. And were your responses, typed or spoken?
They were typed.
Okay. Now you mentioned Ty Garvin. Do you remember, was his name Ty Garvin on the wire, or did he have a handle, if you remember?
At that time, it was just Ty. Later on, he changed it to Gunny.
Okay. And so after this application, or this interview rather, and you go through where do you go to from this vetting or this job interview?
So they closed the vetting window out, and then I was accepted into the main Wolverine Washington page. From there, I had to initiate my comms first. I had to talk first before I seen any of the conversations. So when I got into the group, it was just a blank canvas. I said, "Hey, thanks for the ad." And then once people started replying, I see the text thread.
Okay. And is that the first moment in time that you got into the Wire app and the main chat?
It is.
Okay. What was your goal in wanting to query this group and possibly join them? What were you trying to do?
Well, initially, the Facebook page was just for content reading through Facebook. And then once the post was made for training, I was looking at the time to purchase property so I can shoot and do stuff on my own. The fact that there was a post that they were training at, it was kind of, I could meet people that are pro Second Amendment and a place to shoot.
Okay. When you get into the main chat, tell a jury a little bit about what you first see.
So after I made the initial post or comment, thanks for the group for the ad, I seen a post that was made for wanting to target law enforcement. So we need to do reverse red flag laws so we can target and kill police officers.
Okay, I mean, was that your intent to get into a group that was going to target law enforcement for violence?
No, I was just wanting to train, and the post on Facebook said that they were training. Seeing this comment, in my mind's eye, they were training for a mission and they had an objective and the target was for law enforcement.
And I would object as well. The only thing I'm objecting to is, again, as I've said before, clarification with they, if he knows, if it's attributed to a specific person posting something.
You say they.
The group as a whole, that they were holding a vetting process, Your Honor, and they're selecting and grooming like-minded people that are wanting to further or do violence against law enforcement.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. What else?
I just object to the characterization of grooming. That vetting is not grooming. So if you're vetting, you're vetting. If you're grooming, you're grooming.
Yeah, noted. You all heard it.
So you're in this chat, you see that they're trying to, what about law enforcement were they trying to seek out?
Their addresses to them. Following that post, wanting to do a reverse red flag to law enforcement, it was suggested by the same person that they need to download the app called Onyx Hunt. It was an app that you can share locations or addresses or names of law enforcement or anybody for that matter, where they would live.
Okay, and how does that app work, the Onyx?
You have to download the app. I never downloaded it or seek to further it out.
Fair enough. Okay, when you get into the main chat, is Paul Bellar part of this chat at that moment in time?
Yes.
How about if you know Pete Musico, is he part of the chat at the moment in time that you enter it?
He is the individual who made the comments.
That made which comments?
Doing the reverse red flag law.
Oh, okay. Is Joe Morrison part of this chat at this point in time?
He is, yes.
Okay. And how do you know that they're part of the chat at that moment in time? I mean, you've already explained Mr. Musico, but how do you know Mr. Bellar is part of the chat at that point in time?
Mr. Bellar brought me into the vetting processes. And, Joe Morrison, Ty, and Paul were all part of the vetting process.
Okay, thank you. The we heard from a gentleman earlier today, David Ramirez. Do you know him?
I do.
How long have you known Mr. Ramirez?
10 to 12 years.
And how do you know him?
We're good friends. At one point, he was kind of a landlord for me. We've worked out together. We're just good friends.
Okay. Who did he work for back in 2020?
At that time, Mount Morris Township Police Department.
Okay. Did you reach out to Mr. Ramirez?
I didn't. When I seen the text of them referring to target law enforcement, I reached out to him and asked him if he was working. He said that he was, and I asked if he would swing by the house so I could show him something.
Is this the same day or a different day that you're allowed access into the main chat of the Wolverine Watchman?
It's the same day.
Okay. How much time goes by before you reach out to Mr. Ramirez after seeing what you saw on your phone?
Immediately.
Okay. Does he come to your home that day?
He does.
Okay. And do you show him what's on your phone?
I do.
Okay. Does he appear to have any concerns?
He does, yes.
Okay. What does he say he is going to do? What's his response, Mr. Ramirez?
That he would pass up the information.
Pass up?
Pass up the information that he's seen.
I mean, when you say pass up, that makes me think, I mean, he's just gonna take a pass. I mean.
No, he would
move
take
it
that.
up?
Yeah, he would take that and move it up his chain of command.
Okay, okay. After that, are you contacted by anybody from the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
I am, yes.
And do you know who that person is that reached out to you?
That was Special Agent Jason Chambers.
Okay, and is something asked of you by that?
He asked if I would come in for an interview with him, and I said I would.
Okay. Had you ever gone in for an interview with anybody with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in your life up into this point?
No.
You're 33 years old, correct?
Right.
Okay. And when you get this phone call from him, you said you agree. Where do you go and meet?
I did. I met them in their office parking lot.
Well, let's talk about how much time goes by from the time that you're into this chat with Wolverine Watchman, and I mean, correct to say you were concerned about what you saw?
I was deeply concerned, yes.
Is that why you called Mr. Ramirez?
I was, yes.
Okay. From that day on, is that the 7th of March you mentioned?
Correct.
From that day until the day you go in and you meet with the FBI, how much time goes by?
3 or 4 days.
Okay. And you said that you met in the parking lot of the FBI. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Tell the jury why you had to meet in the parking lot.
They had COVID restrictions in place, so I could not go inside their facility. So we met in my vehicle.
Okay. And do you meet Special Agent Chambers?
I do.
Do you meet anybody else that day?
Special Agent Henry Info.
Okay, and then that's the gentleman seated at council's table here. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay. Whose vehicle do you meet in?
Mine.
And what do you tell them? I mean, when you have you ever been, you said you haven't been interviewed by the FBI before. I mean, tell the jury what you told them when you got in the vehicle.
Basically everything that happened through download or seeing Facebook, downloading the app, going through a vetting process, answering questions that they asked me, getting into the main group and seeing the conversation. And then I physically handed my phone over to them so they can see the conversation that were happening.
Judge, I noticed the hour has turned to 5. Probably is.
Probably a good time to finish.
Break here. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good evening. Now at 9 o'clock.
Rise to adjourn.